What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to the second annual Volleyball Source Polish PlusLiga preview. This is a big one. I'm very excited about this video. Welcome, of course, live from Toronto, Canada, Mr. Everett Delorme, my partner at Volleyball Source. I'm Rob St. Clair, live from Chicago in the USA, and welcoming back a very special guest, one of the original members of the Volleyball Source community, back again to help us understand his country's domestic league, Mr. Pavel Adamczyk, aka Adanos. Welcome back to the show, my friend.
Hello, nice to be back.
Thanks for joining us, Pavel. We learned a lot from the PlusLiga preview that we did last year, and we're going to do something similar. The people have been asking for this for a little while, but this year, more so than all years, the timing between the end of national team season and the beginning of club season is more ridiculous than ever. And the calendar is something we'll certainly get into. But we didn't have very much time to squeeze in this show because the PlusLiga starts 2 days from now. Today is Wednesday, October 18th. The PlusLiga 2023-24 season kicks off this Friday, October 20th. So we are doing what we can to get you all this information before the season starts. I'm excited to get into it. Everett, welcome. You were not part of this preview last year. It's good to have you.
I'm stoked to be here. I'm stoked to be out. This is the first time that I've been on a show with you. So, I mean, I'm stoked about that. Adanos is a straight OG in the volleyball source community. Like he's been in there like just as pretty much just as long as Rob and I have. So
I'm pretty sure he's been in there longer than me. Seriously. Like him and Tommy Blizzard's going to help us preview the Italian Superliga tomorrow. These are the OGs. These are the originals.
Adanos, were you part of the original fantasy league that we did for the Superliga?
Yeah, Monty invited me once you basically stopped trying to play fantasy.
Yeah. Okay. There we go. So he's a part of the OG. So yeah, stoked to be here and just stoked to talk about the PlusLiga and get into what I think it might be a pretty spicy season.
It could be. So, Pavel, I have two questions for you before we kind of dive into the PlusLiga, and it'll help us transition out of national team season and into club season. The first is, give me an assessment right now of Polish volleyball. This was it had to be the best summer, in my opinion, of Polish volleyball on the men's and the women's side nationally that I've seen in a very long time. And we now have had 3 consecutive years where a PlusLiga team has won the Champions League on the club level. So Polish volleyball seems to me to be at an all-time high. Give me your assessment from inside Polish borders of how is volleyball doing right now in your country?
Yeah, I absolutely agree. The best season we've ever had on both sides, especially for national teams. We have players that won every international competition they took part in this year. So starting with Zaksa players, because they won everything with national team and they won Champions League. So volleyball is at all-time high. We have a lot of fans and basically no one is backing out. We are planning to organize another big tournament, so World Championships in future again. And I guess we need to basically make the best use out of our talent we have right now because we won't have it forever. So, and I don't know if everyone realizes that we are at the top at the moment. We have insanely deep pool of talent for both men and women, but looking at the future, I don't think we can be like as strong and have such a big core of great players.
So that's an interesting answer because that goes into what my second question is with the current talent that you have in Polish volleyball, especially on the men's side. We talk about all the time how crazy deep the talent pool is for Poland. Do you think right now has the Polish PlusLiga overtaken the Superliga for the best men's club league in the world?
It's pretty controversial. I think that they in Italy Superliga still have slightly higher budget maybe at the top, and they are probably still a tiny bit more attractive, whether it's due to finances or maybe just the lifestyle, because living in Italy is slightly different than in Poland. The climate is different, so for guys from like Brazil or Cuba, living in Italy is probably a bit easier than in Poland. They don't have such harsh winters. So, but Overall, I think that the average level is pretty similar, but bottom half in Italy is a bit stronger than in Poland, although it's very small difference. And they still have some, like the richest teams in Italy are still a bit richer than the richest teams in Poland, but we are making it up for it with homegrown talent, with Polish players, because we have like a lot of very solid league players that will never play at international level or international competitions because we have so many great players and other people don't know them, but whenever they play against stronger opponents or like players we can see in like 8th to 10th places teams in Italy, they will shine and basically prove that they are actually capable players. But they are not going to leave Poland because they have very good contracts here. They are well appreciated and basically the league is great, so there is no reason for them to leave.
That's well said. We'll certainly get into it when we talk about each individual team and sort of how rosters in the PlusLiga are constructed. But this leads me to sort of our overview of how the PlusLiga works. And before we talk about the format, I actually I want to go to that point in red on the bottom, the foreign player situation and the limit on foreign players on court in the PlusLiga, because this really does govern how every team, every club approaches building their team in every league that has a foreigner limit, but Poland in particular, and it really encourages that homegrown domestic talent. Yeah, maybe the players that you won't see them on the Polish national team, but if they can start consistently and play in the PlusLiga and not count as a foreigner, it can be very valuable. And to make it really clear, the way it works in Poland, on the court at a given time, you can only have 3 players on the court at a given time that are not native to their country. And I say not native to their country. I'm not just saying non-Polish players, because there's an asterisk on that with one team in particular that we will talk about. But you may only have 3 non-native players to that team on the court at a given time. It's not the same way it works in Italy, where it's about how many players are in your starting 7. It's about, of the 6 players on court at a given moment, only 3 of them cannot be from that club's country. Is that correct, Pavel?
Yes, that's correct. It leaves a lot of space to like sign middles or liberos from other countries, like Zaksa does.
like Zaksa does, exactly. I think that they're the only team I know of that uses that system where, because it's on court, Zaksa happens to have 2 foreign middle blockers and a foreign libero. But with those 3 foreign players, really that only counts as 2 spots, because there's never a situation where all 3 of those players are on the court at the same time. And we'll talk about that when we look at their roster. But just to overview the way the PlusLiga works, there are 16 teams in the league, which is a crazy high number and a conversation that we'll certainly have to have. Same format as last year, where and as a lot of the leagues, including the Italian league, it's pretty much a simple double round robin where every team plays every other team in the league twice. That's a total of 30 matches. And the top 8 teams out of the 16 make the playoffs. One thing that is different is the specific format of the playoffs. Pavel, can you tell us about that?
Yeah, because it's Olympic season and we are starting around 3 weeks later than last year. So this season had to be shorter, but our league officials decided that we are not going to make regular season shorter, and instead they made playoffs shorter. So basically quarterfinals and semifinals are 2 games played, then eventually golden set if it's needed, and only final and bronze medal games are best of 3, so 2 victories. The other games for other positions are basically a game and 2 games and potentially golden set for 5th, 7th, and 9th, 11th, and 13th. 15th team basically ends the season after 30 games. Same with 16th team, but they also get relegated.
Yep. So one of my favorite parts about talking about European club leagues is relegation, and that happens everywhere. The very last place team in the PlusLiga will drop down to the second division, and then the winner of the second division this year will get promoted to the PlusLiga next year. Yeah, the playoffs are a little shorter. I think that's a bit of a bummer. I do not like the 2-match Champions League style series. Sometimes it creates a situation where you're playing a set or multiple sets that are meaningless, and I think that is bad for a playoff series, but at least we won't have that problem in the finals. Another thing that's important to point out is that there is a third place series, and for that reason, the top 3 teams that finish in the playoffs qualify for the following season's CEV Champions League, and that is why it's important to play out for third place. And then, like a lot of the other leagues in Europe, there is a Super Cup event at the beginning of the season, which with some of the higher finishing teams from last year, and there is a cup tournament in the middle of the season, and the Polish one is particularly interesting because it brings up teams from both the first and the second leagues, but we don't really need to talk about those that much. Anything else from either of you gentlemen about the format before we move on?
I don't like the new playoff format.
I don't like it either.
I'm just going to throw that out there. I don't like this new playoff format. That's one of the best things about PlusLiga is that they play the long series, and then they play games in the middle of the week, so it's like North American sports, so you can watch it nonstop. So the fact that they're limiting that, I think that's a terrible move by PlusLiga, who are usually on the money, right? Okay, Adanos, maybe you know a little bit more than we do, but from an outsider's perspective, it seemed that there's a little less boomerism within the PlusLiga Polish ranks than there is in some other places.
Maybe it's like 1.5 boomers in a trench coat instead of the usual 3.
Yeah. You got
maybe, because it's not too bad, and now that we have made some changes in our federation, it looks a bit better too. So maybe we'll get even better in the future.
But you were telling me, Pavel, that even like the Polish fans in general agree with Everett and I that this is a bad change for the playoffs.
Yeah, absolutely. No one likes 16 teams in the highest division, and people always loved long playoff series. So whenever they are getting cut basically in half, they don't like it.
What's the ideal amount of teams for you, Pavel?
12 or 14, depending on the level, because as of right now, I think we can handle 14 teams, but in terms of how much talent we have, but long term, I guess we might not have as many good players in like 5 years, so maybe then we will need to drop the number of teams to 12, either that or change the limits, because as long as we need to have half of the squad Polish, then we are basically limited by the number of Polish players at the highest level. At the moment, we can make 14 teams, but once we made the league a bit bigger and it grew to 16 teams, even though one is not exactly Polish, it's like the quality and at the end of the table like got lower, maybe not drastically lower, but significantly.
Yeah, I think that's fair. So we've talked about the calendar. Another thing I also think it's useful to point out, especially for Everett and I that aren't that familiar with Polish geography, is sort of just where the teams are on the map and how geography and travel and the scheduling of the league sort of combine for the teams and for the viewers and just how it all fits together. So Pavel, like you said, the PlusLiga is starting at least 2, maybe 3 weeks later than usual. And it's going to end a few weeks earlier than usual in late April. And that's because it's getting squeezed by the national team season on both ends. But like you said, rather than shortening the regular season, they're instead shortening the playoffs, which I think is a shame. But 30 matches in the regular season in a condensed period of time is a lot. That is insane. And that does not include the Super Cup. It doesn't include the Polish Cup. And it doesn't include any of the teams playing in CEV events like Champions League or CEV Cup or any of that. So while we look at the map here, can you tell us sort of some of the consequences of this condensing of the schedule on the players, for example?
I mean, basically the same issue we had last year, maybe even a bit more extreme than it was. So they will need to play almost every 3 days, basically almost every week. And as you can see on the map, when they play somewhere near, so basically teams in the south, they can squeeze in some trainings. But whenever they travel to the other end of the country, they will basically use whole day to travel, then play the game, use next day to get back home, and they will have like 2 days until the next game. So there is no time to rest, there is no time to train and prepare for next games. So it will be another very difficult season for not only players but also coaching staff, because they've got to somehow squeeze in some training sessions and decide when they need to train, even and when they can like take a risk, either drop a game or drop some points in order to be in peak form when it's necessary.
It's sort of a
crazy.
situation that the national teams have had to go through too, with the world ranking being so important and changing every match. Sometimes you have to make choices that are more for the long term versus the short term. So you might surrender a match or two here and there to keep your main lineup fresh for later in the season. And in my opinion, philosophically, that shouldn't be a thing that a club team should have to do.
Yeah, I mean, they have some bench players, so they need to give them some opportunities. But as of right now, to me, it looks like they will need either to like squeeze in time, maybe some creative scheduling. So like move a game, like if someone like, let's say, Jastrzębski go to the north of Poland to play against Trefl, like squeeze in games against Olsztyn or Suwałki as well, make it 2-for-1, and then have a week off so they can train a bit. I think that's like the only solution. But the issue is it's pretty difficult to get arenas reserved sometimes, especially in big cities. And another problem is every game will be in TV shown by Polsat, so they have to somehow find a time to play the game and that fits both clubs and Polsat and the arena. So it will be pretty difficult to reschedule something.
That's a lot to work with scheduling there, especially if like a lot of those teams don't own their arenas. It's also crazy how much of advantage you have if you're in that little cluster of teams there with Zaksa and JW and everyone else, and how much more travel if you're playing for Gdańsk, Olsztyn, and Suwałki, right? Like that's a huge part of it for those teams as well. Like so much more advantage if you're playing in the south. Why is there more teams in the south?
I guess it's traditions is one thing. Volleyball has been more popular in south of Poland mostly, and it's pretty popular in not the biggest cities. So like if you look at the map, the big cities are Katowice, but GKS is not a top team. Then it's Rzeszów, where it's basically mainly due to their sponsor and owner, basically loving volleyball and investing heavily. And Warszawa, but they were like off the map. They haven't been at the top level for a while. Then they came back. Then they dropped again. So I wouldn't call them like a regulars. And Gdańsk, but they also had their financial problems recently, and they are not like title contenders. Other teams are from cities that are not too big, and there is a lot more pretty rich cities or with big companies investing in these cities in the south of Poland. So that's why they have more money, because almost every club, like Zaksa and Jastrzębski are best examples, are sponsored by companies that have huge facilities in this city. So they are like, to make them more popular to locals, they just sponsor one of their clubs, and volleyball is what they sponsor.
Okay, cool.
That makes sense. So we'll keep bringing up the map throughout the show as we talk about some of the teams. But Pavel also brought up the broadcasting situation in Poland, and in my opinion, the PlusLiga and their partnership with Polsat for broadcasting is the absolute gold standard in the volleyball world. I think that the fact that every single match of the entire PlusLiga season is on TV with full level production, with outstanding commentators in Polish, even though I don't understand them. I know their reputations for being of high quality, and like pregame and postgame shows. Like it's the closest thing to like a an established professional broadcasting setup to what Everett and we have in North America, to be honest. Now there's the Bounce House crew in Germany that's on the much more modern cutting edge of sort of how they're broadcasting things, which is another conversation. But I do think that Polsat is consistently putting out outstanding broadcasts every single year in and year out. However, if you're not in Poland, it's slightly more difficult to find and watch these things, because fortunately for us, if we want to watch the Italian league, they for the last couple of years have been available globally on Volleyball World TV, but that is not the case for the PlusLiga yet. So as far as I know right now, and Pavel, correct me here, the best way for somebody outside of Poland to watch the PlusLiga is to pick up a subscription to Polsat Box Go, which is sort of like their over-the-top streaming for the entire Polsat TV network. But you also need to be able to VPN to Poland to do that. Is that right?
Yeah, basically, in other countries it's like very limited. So if you want basically to easily watch volleyball every time, just VPN to Poland, buy a subscription, and you have access to every sports channel Polsat offers, because games are on like 4 or 5 different channels depending on time and what happens in other sports. So that's the best way, definitely the easiest to do, and the most reliable for sure.
Yeah, and I couldn't find how much like in US dollars the Polsat subscription is, but VPNs are really cheap nowadays. So
it's 40 Polish zlotys per month, so it's like $10 per month.
Okay, that's manageable if you really want to watch the PlusLiga. I mean, this is the way to do it. It's like you said, it's the only way to get every single match. But if you need help with this, join the Volleyball Source Discord, and we will, as part of our community does over there, we'll try to help you watch games as we can. But this by far is the most reliable way to watch every single game all year, and like the most official, consistent, reliable setup.
Yeah, and we are still waiting for Polsat to open up to other countries, whether it's just PlusLiga or Polsat in general, because I feel like it will be pretty interesting for other fans to watch PlusLiga games, even with English commentary. It would be pretty cool to basically give them an offer, even if it's like 1 or 2 games a week. It would be like a nice starting point. And whether it's like some kind of their own polsatboxgo.com or something, or another way, it would be like a potential gold mine.
Yeah, it would be pretty awesome to get a similar setup on Volleyball World TV to what the Superliga has and have some English commentary on there. That would be a nice step. But for now, this is what we have. And as far as English language coverage of the PlusLiga, this channel right here is basically what you got. So if you want to follow along with the PlusLiga all year long outside of the matches, Everett and I will cover it throughout the year on the 9x9. And if you speak English, this is basically the only place you're going to find legit PlusLiga coverage.
Rob, we should pitch to. Sorry, I was saying, Rob, we should pitch to PlusLiga that we do like a match of the week, like 1 match a week here on Volleyball Source. You and I do English commentary. Let's get it done. PlusLiga, if you're listening, we're available. Let's make something work here.
That would be electric. Yeah,
I would like to see that.
I bet you would, Pavel. If we can get some of our Polish fans watching us and commentating in English instead of the Polish commentators, that's how we know we've really made it.
Who are legends, by the way.
They are legends.
Like
yeah,
that Polish guy that you commentated beside last year at VNL.
Yeah, I met Tomasz at VNL 2022. He is an absolute legend. Great guy.
Yeah, Tomasz Swędrowski is a legend of Polish volleyball. Yep.
So that was a cool moment. All right, gentlemen. Anything else to talk about the league or Polish volleyball in general before we jump into talking about each team?
Let's do it. Let's jump in. I'm excited.
Yeah, we can start.
Let's do it. All right, let's do it. So as we start with all these previews like this, we're going to start at the bottom. We're going to go in order of last to first in terms of last year's finish. And of course, that means we're starting off with the team that got promoted from the 2nd division. Goodbye, Bielsko-Biała. Thanks for participating. Back to the 2nd league you go. They were relegated last year. And now we get to welcome Exact Systems Hemarpol Częstochowa, a.k.a. Norwid Częstochowa. Welcome to the PlusLiga, to this team. Pavel, we'll certainly talk about every team and talk about every every roster. But as is the situation with any team that is new to the top league that gets promoted, number one goal is to stay there. Before we dive into it, Pavel, do you think that Norwid has a chance to not get relegated and to stay in the PlusLiga for multiple years?
Yeah, absolutely.
You do?
I think they will stay.
Okay, all right.
Which is pretty cool because Częstochowa is a city, basically legendary city for Polish volleyball. And after AZS collapsed, we haven't seen a team from there in a while. So even though it's a different club, it's good to see them back on the map.
So tell us about this club, and like I said before the show, help us out with every club's name. What's a sponsor? What's like a city name? What's a club name? And how should us English speakers refer to these clubs? That would be really helpful.
So yeah, Exact Systems Hermopol, it's sponsor's name. Częstochowa is obviously the city, and Norwid is the club's name. It's based on a school that's in Częstochowa.
Okay, so we should call them Norwid throughout the season?
Yeah.
Great, that's what we will do. And this is going to be a fun team to watch because Everett, both you and I have players from our countries on this team. We've got Byron Keterakis, the Canadian setter, who we saw lead that was Pan Am Cup, Pan Am Games, whatever team that was.
Pan Am Cup, yeah.
Pan Am Cup to that Canadian B team winning gold at Pan Am Cup, and Keterakis might have been their best player. And then we have Caleb Jenis from the United States, the outside hitter out of Ball State, will be, at least in Pavel's opinion, the first guy off the bench at outside hitter, who I like. Everett saw him. I know, Everett, you weren't quite as high on him, but I do like Caleb Jenis. I hope that he has a good season. And then a couple other foreigners here and there. But Pavel, one thing I like to ask about these lower level Polish teams is how good are their domestic middle blockers? Because if you're a lower level team, you don't have quite as much of a budget. You're going to spend money on your foreigners. You're going to spend it at the wings and maybe at setter, and that's exactly what Częstochowa or Norwid is doing. So you're likely going to have to rely upon domestic middles and often domestic liberos, except not in Norwid's case. How would you rate Peter Hein and Bartosz Schmidt in the middles?
Hein is good. He has been playing in PlusLiga as a starter for many years. So very experienced guy with solid blocking and spiking. So it's not like he will not be a superstar player, but he is someone I wouldn't worry about. I'm sure he will be their number one middle throughout this season, and he will give them quite a lot of points. He has been very good for GKS Katowice in past, and he used to be known as a pretty big talent, but as long as he's healthy, he should be good because he had quite a lot of injuries in the past. The other guy, Bartosz Schmidt, had very good season in Pierwsza Liga, so in second division, and he has some experience in PlusLiga, so he's not definitely like a star player or something, but against teams from their area in table, he will be pretty much okay.
And a really nice pickup for them is they get David Dulski on loan from Zawiercie, who we saw last year coming off the bench at opposite for David Konarski a decent amount. And I thought he was better, straight up. Now, my thoughts on David Konarski have always been very clear, but I like David Dulski. I think he's got a lot of potential. And as far as a primary scorer for a team just getting promoted to the top level, this is about as good as they could have asked for. What are your opinions, Pavel, on David Dulski?
Their best transfer of this offseason.
By
far, definitely. And not only he was good in Zawiercie coming off the bench, but he had some very good showings in VNL this season.
He played VNL early? I didn't even know that.
Yes, in week 1, and I think he had he started one game, and then he was subbed in and was basically our best player in at least one other game. So he had very good showing in week 1, and Krbic basically changed his plans, wanted to take him for another week, but before he gets another chance, he got injured, so he was left at home. But he's probably our best, most talented opposite in Poland right now, and he's definitely ready to be a starter in PlusLiga, and I think he will be basically he will keep Norwid in PlusLiga almost by himself.
that was kind of what I thought, is he might be good enough to single-handedly keep this team in the league. So that's good to hear. We know Byron Keterakis well. Everett, give us the scouting report on this Canadian kid, because what I've kind of called him for years is the Canadian James Shaw. Does that sound about right?
Yes and no. I mean, yeah, I think so. I would say that no slight against James Shaw, but one of the biggest things about Byron Keterakis is that I've heard from multiple people that he's always the most competitive guy in a room, right? He wants to win. He wants to win bad. And that's why we've seen him kind of backstop some teams, right? We saw it this summer with the Pan Am Cup. Canada dropped their first match to Brazil, ended up beating Brazil in the final with like Darlin Souza on the team, like guys on the Brazilian team in the final. I'm pretty sure Adriano was on that team as well. Like guys on that team. I mean, we saw him bring teams when he was with Netzhoppers, and Frankfurt, bring teams to the finals of the German Cup. I mean, he's a guy that's like kind of been there, done it. I think Poland suits him really well. He's big, he's strong, he's physical. He's a really, really good all-around volleyball player, and he's a good leader. So if he has a guy like Dulski at his disposal, I think this actually could be a really good team. And one thing I like also about this team is often you see the teams coming up try to go for the younger guys. It looks like this team has kind of gone for some of the older guys. Both of the middles you mentioned are, have been playing, like started their careers in like the 2000s and have played for over a decade. So there's a good veteran presence from this team. Like you said, Rob, I'm not the biggest fan of Caleb Janis. If he's the first guy coming off the bench, I kind of see that as a lack of depth, but I'm willing to give him the benefit of the doubt and see how things go.
Regarding their bench, I don't know. I think Janis will be the first to come in, but they have like a lot of outsides, because to me it looks like they've built a team, and once they were like officially promoted, they had some opportunities to pick up some new players like Dulski, because he was not like planned signing at first. So when the opportunity showed, they like got Dulski, and then they looked at the transfer market again and signed some new guys like Ayman Bugera and Caleb Janis too. So at the moment they have like 6 outsides. One is Rafał Sobański, who is pretty decent and played at decent level. Oskar Espeland is like a young Norwegian player, so maybe he will get a chance. So their coach will have to like rank their outsides quite early on, because with so many of them, you'll have a lot of opportunities to find the best duo. And the guy I would probably like take a look at is Damian Kogut, who was very, very good last year in second division, which is why I think he will be their starter. And they also are limited but because they cannot start more than 3 foreign players. So if Turakis is starting setter and Takahashi is starting libero, they can only play 1 outside from another country. Luckily, they have 3 Polish outsides. So
foreign libero is an interesting move for this team. And like Sho Takahashi of Japan, I know nothing about, because he's not their national team starter as far as I've ever seen. So that's an interesting move that might limit them a little bit. But having an outstanding opposite not counting as your foreigner limit, I think is a huge luxury for them.
Yeah, absolutely. I think they have like top half opposite starting for them, and that's like a big thing for a team that wants to avoid relegation. They have a great top scorer on the right, so they can basically play more defensive outsides, try to focus on defense, and just give the ball to Dulski and hope he carries their offense.
Chuck him a bunch of balls. Well, I'm excited to see how they do. It is good to hear that the team that gets promoted, in your opinion, is likely to avoid relegation. I always like it when teams get promoted and stick around. So good for Norwid. Are we ready to move on?
Yeah.
Let's move on to the team that barely avoided relegation last year. Serad Enea Czarni Radom, 3-27 last year. That is rough. That is not a good showing. They won the tiebreaker. I think they had the same record as Bielsko-Biała, but won the tiebreaker on points. However, they have gone out and made some moves. They have picked up Brody Hofer, fresh out of Trinity Western in Canada. I know Everett's excited about that. And they have one of our favorite players in the Volleyball Source universe, Nikola Meljanats, Aquaman of Serbia,
Let's go.
on the right side, which is electric. They do also have Vuk Todorovic, who was the Serbian starting setter at Olympic qualifiers, who I do not like personally. I'm curious to hear Pavel's thoughts on this. Pavel, first of all, help us out with this club's name. What's a sponsor? What's the town? How should we refer to them?
So as you can see in the logo, it's Czarni is their name, which basically is black. So that's why their fans are always wearing black. Radom is of course the city, and Cerad and Enea are two sponsors.
Okay. And can this team improve on going 3-27?
Yes, I think so, because they will start the season with Pavel Wojcicki as coach, and it's his team. So he was building it. And well,
was he the guy last year? Remind me, was he the guy last year that was on the coaching staff for a little bit, and then they needed a setter, and he unretired and was the setter for the rest of the season? Or am I thinking about a different guy?
He was the setter, but he didn't play, I think. Yeah.
Okay.
It happened. It wasn't the first time it happened. I know that Jakub Bednaruk, who is now an expert in Polsat TV, used to coach, and whenever one of their setters got injured, he also unretired to be a backup setter.
I love it when that happens. That's awesome. So tell us about Czarni. Tell us what do you think what do you think their ceiling is? Like, do you think they can get to double-digit wins? Can they get to 10 wins?
Pretty tough. I don't know. I feel like they would need Brody Hofer and Aquaman going crazy to get into double digits of wins. This league is pretty strong, and their middles are very unimpressive. Basically, the only hope to have a strong middle is Kufka, so the backup middle at first, at least, I think, who just finished school in Spała and moved from second division to Radom, like having a breakthrough season. Because Reisner is all right, and he was backup middle for Warta Zawiercie last year. Ostrowski is like a guy that has been part of Czarni Radom for ages, but he had serious injuries, so I'm not sure how good he can be, and he has never been standout. So it's like not great middle. Their libero is okay, pretty good in defense, but his passing is not great. But he is from Radom, so he will be at least motivated. And how about that? It's like they need a lot of points from two foreign wingers.
Hofer and Meljanats. Okay, tell us about this Piotrowski guy. Is he much of a scorer or not really?
Not too much. I mean, he can score some points, but as far as I know, he hasn't been like a superb offensive power. He was backup in Resovia and played a little bit once they got like too many injuries. And whenever Mauricio Borges was Mauricio Borges, basically.
Oh, Uncle Mo. It is worth talking about Uncle Mo, because last year he started the season with Czarni, yes, right? And then randomly in the middle of the year, Resovia picked him up, who was like the number one ranked team in the standings. So that didn't make any sense to me.
It was pretty random because they got injuries. So like Rossard was injured and was out for the rest of the season, so they needed an outside. But why the hell would they go for basically the worst starting outside in the league is a huge question mark.
Uncle Mo has been a meme in the Volleyball Source universe for a long time, so it was really fun to be able to make fun of him for that last year. Unfortunately, he is no longer playing in the PlusLiga. maybe fortunately.
But now in playoffs.
Yeah, that was ridiculous to watch. Tell us, Pavel, you and Everett go back and forth about, is this a good fit for Brody Hofer? And Everett, what can we expect performance-wise from Brody Hofer out of Trinity Western this year?
Okay, I guess I'll start. So actually, there's actually a couple of U Sport guys on this team, because one of the other middles who had just joined this team, Wojtek Kraj, just finished 4 years at McMaster. He's originally from the JW club. And came over as an international student a few years. So you've got two guys who are U Sport guys on this team, and I think that's a good thing for Brody, because there's someone who speaks both languages, like speaks fluent English, just did his university in Canada, but also speaks fluent Polish. So I think that's going to be good. I think this is a good opportunity for Brody Hofer. I mean, you're really putting him in there in a situation where like he's going to have to start again in one of the, if not the top leagues in the world. I'm excited for this team mostly because of Nikola Malyanats. Like I think he's electric at all times. I think that in my eyes, like there's had to be something there where Malyanats and Todorovic were like, yo, let's work together. I'm pretty sure I remember Malyanats commentating on one of the old posts of him that we posted on Instagram about something about Todorovic and how he liked him. So if there's a good vibe with those guys, I think it's going to be good. And I think it's a good chance for Brody to come in and be a full-time left side at the professional level, like really get some reps, feel the service pressure, and really start working on that serve receive. Offensively, I think he's going to be fine, but we're really going to see how his serve receive dictates his level of play throughout his first year.
Sounds like he might not get a whole lot of help from his libero, so he might get a lot of high ball practice as well this year.
Hey, you know what? I'm pretty sure Brody's comfortable hitting the high ball.
I think he is as well.
Yeah, I think he is like thrown into the deep water, and he either swims or drowns, nothing in between, because it's pretty bad team. Great opportunity. He will get to play a lot against strong opponents, but it can be a good thing if he handles it well. But whenever things get bad, it can get really, really bad. So a good opportunity. I'm not surprised he's trying it, because he can always go back to like France and try to climb back into PlusLiga. But if he performs well in Radom this season, he will open a door to transfer to like a good Polish team, maybe even top Polish team, depending how well he plays.
That's well said. I think there's kind of two approaches for a young North American kid like this, especially at a wing position. Is you go and start on a bad team, or you go and sit the bench on a really good team. And there's another Canadian outside hitter who we will talk about later that is choosing to sit the bench on a good team. But Brody Hofer, I'm excited to see him just get hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of reps against great teams this year and just see how he does.
I think starting for a bad team is the perfect scenario for Brody. It's what he needs with his mentality, just the type of player he is. I mean, he was starting for Trinity in his first year right off the bat. They won a national championship. So he knows how to do that. He's done that in his university career, and I think we're gonna see the same in professionally.
Yeah, and they will need him in order to stay in PlusLiga, because there is not a lot of weak teams here. So either Norwid or the probably next team we'll talk about is like their main competition in order to avoid relegation, and they will really need a lot out of Hofer, because Puszek is not getting any younger and he can help with passing, but like they need points from Melianac or Hofer. The only other guy I can see being really good is their second opposite, so Bartol Gomułka. I don't know if you remember, but his club from Warszawa won youth championship in Poland like 2 or 3 years ago. They've won like a crazy game 3-2, and he scored 40 points in the final.
Whoa.
So and he had very good season in second division, so I think he can like improve and step up if necessary. But they have Aquaman, so he might not be needed at all.
Okay, so it does seem like Czarni will be something of a relegation candidate again.
Yes.
Hopefully their offense is a little bit better. They led the league in errors last year offensively, and they had the second worst hitting percentage, hitting only 45% offensively on the league.
Kills?
45% kills. That's not even efficiency. They were down at 45%. That was the second worst in the league. It's over Bielsko Bala. So yeah, I mean, I like, that's why I like some of the moves that they made. They've got some really offensive minded attackers here, especially with Hofer and Melianats out there. So it may be ugly, but hopefully they score some more points.
I mean, at least they will be probably going all out, and the bar is not set too high. But this year they don't have Bielsko-Biała, so it will be pretty tough.
Great point. So, like you said, another one of Czarni's relegation competitors. I assume you were talking about this team.
Not exactly.
Oh, not exactly this.
I think they will be a bit stronger than other relegation candidates.
Okay, so this next team, Cuprum Lubin, who finished 14th last year, but that gap was pretty huge. I mean, Czarni won 3 games and Cuprum Lubin won 10 games last year. That is a very big difference. The only foreigners on this team, Alexander Berger at outside from Austria, who's been around for a long time. The only thing I only ever remember about him is that Bernardi used to play him over Aaron Russell on Perugia back in the day, which always blew my mind. And then, of course, we have Jake Haynes. Big Jake, our American friend who we've gotten to know this summer. I'm turning a corner on Jake Haynes, getting to know him and watching him play this summer. I actually think he had a pretty good summer. But he was the starter on Bielsko Biała last year, who did get relegated. He's coming over. He's staying in the PlusLiga at least, and it seems like his mission once again will be to help a team not to get relegated. Around him, bunch of Polish dudes. So Pavel, tell us about this team because I know nothing about them outside of Jake Haynes.
Jake Haynes is probably lucky to stay because Bielsko was horrendous and he was the
Terrible.
only guy that was somewhat decent because every other guy was bad. And I'm not sure he will keep the starting spot, but we'll see about that in future because last season they had Remigiusz Kaplica starting opposite and he was starting at first, but Adam Lawrence, so their backup opposite, took a starting role and had very good season, so it will be a decent competition for Haynes. However, talking about Polish players, it's Kubicki, Kajetan Kubicki, the setter, is definitely the most exciting name on this list. Polish, big hope, because a team that won pretty big important tournaments. I think they won European Championships in under 19 category, and Kubicki was their best player. They didn't have huge guys, their passing was alright, but nothing crazy, so they didn't have individual talent like the 97 team before, and despite all of that, they still won. He's the guy that has a lot of confidence, pretty creative, really likes playing with his middles, and very good service, despite being not too physical and pretty short for a setter anyways.
Yeah, he's 1 meter 90 and he's a 2003.
Yeah,
So
but he's
everyone loves a young setter. If you have a young promising setter, that can be single-handedly a reason to watch a team.
Yeah, I don't know if you remember, but at first they were starting Grzegorz Pająk, and then he left to AZS Olsztyn once Josh Tuaninga had his injury, and Kubicki was their starter basically. He started every game, played every single game, and when he joined them, Adam Lawrence started to play better too, but their middles had Florian Krage back then and Paweł Pietraszko were very, very good, and whenever they had some upset wins against Jastrzębski Węgiel and Resovia.
I remember that. Yeah.
Yes, both of their middles scored 15 points in both games, so that's quite a big number. And got MVPs. And Paweł Pietraszko, in terms of raw numbers, was top 3 middle in the league last year. Looking at just numbers,
really?
he had insane numbers, 69% kills or something like that.
Whoa!
So as long as he can continue playing that well, it will be very good because it was his best year by far. Lipinski and other middles are young. I think they are all born in 2000 or 2001 and both played quite a lot in second division. I think Lipinski will start because he's the most complete. He has very good service too, while the others are more spiking or blocking middles. And I really like signing of Kamil Kosowski because he's the guy that was shining in GKS Katowice when they were upsetting everyone left, right, and center and made it into top 8 when no one expected
2 years
them
ago.
to. Yeah, 2 and 3 years ago he was their starter and he was very good passing the ball, but also consistently scoring quite a lot. So somewhat similar to Berger last year, who was Cuprum's best player by far. And they looked so much better when he was playing than compared to Cuprum without Berger.
Okay. I also saw that they signed a Brazilian second setter.
Yes.
This Danilo Gielinski guy. I know nothing about him. Everett, was this the guy from the Pan Am Cup team? Or is this some different guy?
Ooh. I've known of Galinsky, but more so from his work in the French league the past few years. Like that. Like I'm pretty sure. Was he on? He might have been on that Cons team with Taylor Averill. I'm just looking through here. No, it was the next year that he was on it. Oh no, yeah, he was on the team, the Cons team with Taylor Averill. I don't know him from anything from having played for Brazil.
Okay.
I don't know if he ever has, but I just know him from the French league.
Yeah, I think if he starts if he starts in first weeks of PlusLiga, fans will riot because like every Polish fan is looking at Kubicki and hoping because we need another good setter. So like pressure is there, and I think everyone will be like hating on Paweł Rusek, so Kubicki if he doesn't start him.
It would be nice to have a backup setter on the Polish national team not named Grzegorz Łomacz.
Yeah.
So, all right. Anything else about this Cuprum Lubin team? Or Pavel, what do you think about where do you think that they're going to finish? Can they get to the playoffs? Can they get to 10th? Can they get to 12th?
Probably not, but 10th, 12th is realistic. I think they will avoid relegation. Maybe not very easily, maybe easily. It depends how well it goes. But like, if they can organize their game well, I think they can be a pretty cool team to watch, especially if their middles are playing well. And if that works, I think they will easily avoid relegation and be closer to top 8 than last place. Like that's how good they can go. Like I don't think they will be threatened by relegation unless they will get hit by a complete disaster.
No, I think this is going to be a pretty good team. As if they've got 3 guys who can score. Like Jake Haynes was a top 20 scorer last year in the league. He scored over 400 points, and then Berger scored just over 300, and Kwasowski. He scored basically 300 as well. So you've got 3 outs guys that can score you a total of like 1,000 points out there. So as long as they can play, I think they could be competitive.
Yeah, I also like the fact that both Kwasowski and Berger are decent defensively. They can pass pretty well and they can defend pretty well. So it will be like up to Kubicki to shine because he will be given opportunities to set from pretty good balls. He won't be running around trying to just save the ball. He will be like given options.
Good. Well, that's what you want to see from a young setter, certainly. So yeah, this team could be this Lubin team could be kind of fun to watch. Are we ready to move on to the next team, which is one that is very interesting? Let's do it. So this is Barkom Lviv, and this team is very interesting because this is not a Polish team. This is now the second year that we have a Ukrainian team participating in the PlusLiga. So if you take a look at the map again, you see Lviv just over the border there, just over the southeastern border of Poland. But for reasons both obvious and not so obvious, Barkom Lviv, as far as their PlusLiga goes this year, will play their home games in some town called Wieluń, right, near Częstochowa?
Yes, basically near Częstochowa.
So what have been the sort of the consequences and the situations around having a Ukrainian team in the PlusLiga? Because Lviv did play last year. They went 8-22. They were okay. But what maybe more like off the court. Well, what does it mean to have a Ukrainian team playing in the PlusLiga?
They are pretty good. So it's like they are not a team that stands out as the worst in the league. So that's okay. They basically don't take Polish talents. So it's another team that doesn't need more Polish players in order to be decent. Of course, there is a lot of Ukrainians living in Poland nowadays. So it's like gives them something to cheer for as well. And in terms of sports, like it's an opportunity to get more fans to watch PlusLiga because basically it's another country that will follow our league and try to watch their own team playing there. And also it's a good opportunity for Ukrainian players to improve and play against strong opponents because it will help them for sure. And So yeah, I don't know. I feel like it's a pretty cool move. And
I
it
agree.
shows that we are open for other countries and other teams.
Yeah, I think it's a great move, both for like growth of Ukrainian volleyball and sort of support for Ukraine as a country as the war with Russia still rages on. And it's important to point out with Barkom Lviv, as far as the definition of a foreign player goes for this team, it's a non-Ukrainian player, not a non-Polish player. So as you see on the screen, all these teams, the players in red in the starting lineup would be their foreigners. The players in black are the domestic players. And Barkom Lviv, of course, is full of Ukrainian players. Those are Ukrainian players for this team only, do not count against the foreigner limit in the PlusLiga. So that's how that works. One very notable name, obviously, is Luciano Polonsky of Argentina, who Everett and I got to know this summer at VNL. I was surprised to see him going. I wasn't surprised to see him going to the PlusLiga, but I was surprised to see him going to Barkom Lviv. And I know that contract was signed before VNL. I'm convinced that if he figured out this contract after VNL, it might be for an even better spot. Pavel, what are your thoughts on Polonsky joining this team?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, he got going quite late on in VNL and in France in playoffs, I think. He had very good players.
Yeah, he played for Tours last year, who won everything in France.
So, like, if he waited a bit more, he would have probably gotten better offers. And so right now, he's their best player by far and their best hope, him and Tupci, in order to survive. And I don't know, I feel like it's a great signing for the league as a whole and for Barkom. And I hope he will stay in PlusLiga next year, whether it is the same team or the other team. Because he's a very good player.
He's also signed through next year as well.
That's right. He has a 2-year contract.
So unless they get really relegated, I think he will not stay there if they get relegated.
That's true.
Because as far as I know, the team is playing on the same rules as every other Polish team. So if they finish last, they get relegated. And they are allowed to compete in second division in order to get back up.
Okay, well, that's good. They're not getting any like special benefits for not being Polish. They're able to be relegated as well if they don't play well enough. Do you think that's possible, Pavel? Is this a relegation candidate team or no?
Yes, I think so. Despite signing of Polonsky and keeping Tupci, I'm looking at their setters and I'm looking at their liberos, and I see no improvement at liberos and significant downgrade at setter because Yeni Pazar had a very, very good season. So despite getting stronger outsides, I'm not really convinced by this team. I don't think they will be bad, and I think I would give them better chance of staying than like Czarni Radom. I think they will be closer to relegation than they were this year because despite only 8 wins, they had a lot of tie breaks and they scored a lot of points, and so they were pretty far away. And Bielsko-Biała and Radom were terrible, so they were far, far away from relegation. This year it will be closer, and they might miss the experience of someone like Artem Smoliar, who I think retired, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think Smoliar is low-key kind of a big loss. He's been a mainstay of the Ukrainian national team for so long. I thought he was a nice piece of this team. Yeah, I don't know anything about Denis Petrovs, the setter. I assume that him being Latvian under a Latvian coach is a nice connection. But if you say he's a downgrade from Yeni Pazar, which I completely believe, then I believe you. And this is going to be an interesting exercise of how much weight can Luciano Polonsky put on his back.
Yeah, basically him and Tupci. Tupci was very good.
Tupci is good, yeah. Tupci can score.
Yeah, Kovalyev can score, but he was very inconsistent, so I don't think I would put my faith in him. I would probably hope Polonsky and Tupci can make them survive here.
You got any takes on this team?
No, not much really. I mean, I think Polonsky's going to have to get a lot of volume. I think you're right, Rob. He must have signed this contract a while ago. But yeah, it should be interesting. I'm interested to see if they're going to bring in the young opposite, Christers Dardzans at all throughout the
Oh, I
years.
remember that kid. Now, if they would do that, they would probably have some foreigner issues. But he was the backup on Perugia
Yeah.
forever ago. They brought him in as like the 14th guy on the bench for Perugia when he was really young, and obviously he never saw the court, and I kind of forgot about him.
Yeah, so we'll see. We'll see if he gets some playing time. But yeah, I agree.
They can probably like do a double sub with setter because their second setter is Ukrainian. So they
yeah,
can
would work.
probably just give him some opportunities that way.
Okay.
Yeah. So, I mean, yeah, he was playing in the Finnish league last year, so we'll see. We'll see how that translates.
Yeah,
Wow,
it's like a crazy
Perugia
signing.
Perugia to the Finnish league to a Ukrainian team playing in the PlusLiga. That's a very interesting career path.
Yeah, I mean,
Right.
I don't know if you remember, but Robert Tacht joined Cuprum Lubin from Estonian league, and he was on the bench for a while, and then they got injury crisis. He started playing, and he was amazing, and became the starter. So
I certainly remember the explosion of Robert Tott onto the scene years ago. I always loved that guy.
So who knows? Maybe this will
All
be
right.
another.
Anything to talk about Barkom Lviv? Anything else, or can we move on?
I think we can move on.
All right. Up next, in terms of who finished where last year, we have Katowice. They finished 12th a year after they made the playoffs 2 years ago. They were, I think that the word that I would use for them last year was kind of irrelevant. They didn't really beat anybody. They didn't really lose to anybody. They were never in the playoff picture. They were never in the relegation picture. They were a little bit forgettable. And in my opinion, not knowing all that much about this team, they are on pace to be pretty forgettable again this year. Pavel, is that fair?
Yeah, I think it's fair. Like it's a team that shouldn't be close to relegation, but not good enough to challenge for top 8. I like their setup when looking at their outsides. It's Szymański is pretty good. He also had some played a game or two in VNL. Vasina is pretty solid. So maybe,
I like Vashina. Yeah.
maybe when he gets like a lot of play time, he can improve. And they still have Walinski, who was a very reliable sub for Zawiercie and was pretty decent back in Cuprum. I think we will see the change at opposites because Jakub Jarosz is getting older and Damian Domagawa is getting to play a bit more each season. So this might be the year he will become a starter. And also he played with Kozuk in youth teams. Because both are from this golden generation, 97, 98 team that won everything.
Okay, we have seen Kozub a little bit. I think he's played for Poland. He was like the backup setter to Firle in like week 1 last year when Everett and I were at VNL. So I've seen him a little bit. Yeah, Jarosz is a bit of a legend, but he's older. And then I know nothing about the middles or the libero on this team.
So Mariański was playing for Katowice, then he moved to Resovia with Piotr Gruszka, who was their coach when Katowice had a decent season and they wanted like Polish core, and they signed their coach and he took Mariański with him. But this whole project failed and Mariański went back to GKS. But for a team like GKS, he's very good. He's like around league's average, maybe slightly above league average in terms of passing. So we've been very solid defender. So I would say he's definitely good for a team like GKS for sure. And the middle blockers are pretty good. Krulitsky was another guy with similar career path to Mariański. So from GKS to Resovia, but he was sitting on the bench there for I think 3 or 4 years and now moved back to GKS. But he's rather solid, and Sebastian Adamczyk. So this is the guy that was surprisingly called to national team this year by Nikola Kubic. And he was like pretty decent last year, and it was his first year in PlusLiga when he got to play a lot. So as long as he can continue to get a bit better, then he will be pretty good. So like they don't have a standout player. I don't see here a name that there is someone who will be like should play in a team fighting for top 8 or even better. But I also don't see anyone that is bad or someone that shouldn't be in a team that wants to aim for like very safe season.
Okay, yeah, safe is a good word. I don't, like I said, I don't see them being in the relegation picture. I also don't see them being in the playoff picture. I mean, if you're a fan though, and Katowice being in a pretty big city, like what more can this club do to get back to being nationally competitive, to be a playoff team?
Yeah,
Like, are they? Do you foresee them being kind of stuck in this point for a long time?
it depends which path they take, but as you can see, it's GKS Katowice, GKS in their name. It's just, and so they don't have any big sponsor, and they won't have any big sponsor probably, at least as far as I know, as long as they continue being a part of GKS, because it's a huge club. They have a soccer team or football team, and I think hockey team too. So they are like only a part of the club, and if they want to be big, they would probably need to split ways with them. But it's also like a huge gamble, because if they fail to find
Huge gamble.
sponsors, yeah, if they
Huge gamble.
fail, then they are basically dropping down, and probably not just one, but two or two divisions, maybe even three. So I think as long as they stay as part of GKS, unless they can somehow convince that they are like they should be the biggest part of the team of the club, because that's maybe when GKS will give them a bit more to spend. Otherwise, they will continue to be like solid team, but nothing special. Unless they have like explosive season and like two or three of their players suddenly explode and get a ton better and carry them to at least top 8, maybe something more. But it's
Okay.
unlikely.
I think that's a good assessment. I have really nothing more to add about Katowice. How about you, Everett?
No, not really. I'm uninspired by this
Yeah.
team.
Good word.
Uninspired.
Good word. All right, let's move on. Let's move on to a very interesting team. Let's move on to PGE. I don't know what GIEK is. I think that's one of their new sponsors.
Yes.
Skra Bełchatów. This is probably the most storied franchise in the history of the PlusLiga. I do know they've won the most titles in the history of the PlusLiga.
Yes.
And they have been unbelievable throughout their history. They were a Champions League participant for years. I think they even won one for maybe forever ago. I don't know what the star
No.
is above their. No, they did not. Yeah, I guess that's
No.
eluded the PlusLiga for a long time until Zaksa. But I mean, Skra was unbelievable. Like when Everett and I know when we were growing up, just starting to get into club volleyball, like Skra was a team. They were a team. Like they had big names. They had a big budget. They were consistently top 3 in the league. And now they have completely crashed and burned. It started with the firing of Jacek Nawrocki, who, I mean, we talked about on the 9x9 last year when it happened. Their chairman, who, no, sorry, not Nawrocki, it's Piechocki, right? The old,
Yeah,
like the
Piechocki.
father of the old, like nepotism libero.
Yes.
Oh man. So, Pavel, give us like what was the last 12 months looked like for Skra Bełchatów? Like, what has led them to this point, finishing 11th?
So at the first, like they started the season pretty normally, and in the middle of the season, we started hearing rumors about players not getting paid, and they fired their coach because obviously, and after they fired Joel Banks, who was their coach at the time, like the rumors got bigger and bigger. And we found out that their chairman, so Konrad Piechocki, father of Kacper Piechocki, their libero, was basically rolling the budget, if I may call it this way. So he was using the money he will get for this season, for next season, this season. And it basically, he ran out of money because he wanted to pay the players later, and players got pissed. That's understandable.
Understandable.
The results got worse and worse, and everything was going the wrong way. And in the end, they fired their coach, fired their chairman, of course. And at first, it looked really bad, but then PGE, so their sponsor, PGE, decided to keep sponsoring them. They paid their debts, and they went from a team that was supposed to be like, oh, we'll just build a team to not be terrible in PlusLiga. They built a pretty decent team. They have some money, and they are supposedly going to have a bigger budget in the near future and try to get back to the top.
That's good. I'm happy to hear that they've sorted it out. I mean, firing Piechocki was a no-brainer. I could not stand watching Kacper try and play libero on that team. It was just useless. Like probably the worst example of nepotism I may have ever seen in volleyball. Now, my thoughts on Grzegorz Łomacz have always been pretty clear. I think that other than the ability to set the middle, he is kind of useless. He's very small. He's not young. He's not really good at anything. I do love Benjamin Diaz, the French libero that they picked up. I think he's outstanding. And I actually like the Wisniewski and Poręba combo in the middle. I think that replacing Mateusz Biniak is rough, who is at Skra. Well, Biniak and Karol Kłos. Like, that was an amazing middle duo. They were there forever. They needed to go get paid and play on a good team. I don't blame them for leaving. I do think Wisniewski and Poręba are pretty good. But the duo of Łomacz and David Konarski just does not do it for me. That does not do it for me.
I knew that was coming.
yeah. If you ever heard me talk about the PlusLiga and talk about Polish volleyball, you know my thoughts on those two guys. I don't see it. I don't see it for those two guys. I do like Lipinski at outside hitter. I have no idea who this Romanian guy is, but they have Dorion, like the French lefty, and they have Mateusz Mika, who once upon a time was an outstanding player on the bench. Like, how is this season going to go for Skra, Pavel, in your opinion?
Yeah, well, they have a lot of power in the middle, so pretty good when their setter is Łomacz, so at least they are making use of his ability to set middles. And they have sick libero, like you said. So Mika, as far as I know, he got injured, and that's why they signed Terulian. So that's basically the story of Mika's career, and especially in the last few years. Achambate, I think, had very, very good Euros. Like Romania
was
really
good.
well, and he was there, like, really good there. And he is pretty decent defensively, so he can create a decent pair with Lipinski. But we need to see Lipinski from Gdańsk, like 2 and 3 years ago, or at least from Bydgoszcz or other times, not Lipinski we saw last year in Olsztyn, because he was pretty bad. Like, very underwhelming season, one of the biggest disappointments last year. But overall, this team is pretty decent, well balanced, and as long as we ignore its Łomacz and Konarski, it's pretty promising. I think they can challenge for top 8, and I don't know if they can get there.
Really? You think this could be a playoff team?
Yeah, depending how their outside's stack, because it can be Derulion and Achambate if Lipinski doesn't perform. So
true, they have one more foreigner spot that they could use if they wanted to.
And Łomacz, I mean, wasn't that bad. Like 2 seasons ago, they were in playoffs, so he can get them there despite his weaknesses and poor service, poor blocking, and overall pretty average setting when we are ignoring the part about middles. But yeah, maybe Konarski will get super motivated to show up, because when he's motivated, he at least can have some decent games. Like, just take a look at playoffs Zawiercie had, not last season, but 2 years ago, and Konarski, like, something switched in his brain and played the best series of his career, I think.
I do remember that. He was extremely good 2 playoffs ago. But
so then he went back to being painfully
He went back to being Konarski. He went back to being the right-handed Jan Hadrava, is what I like to call him.
Yeah, decent description, yeah.
Thank you.
It fits, yeah. So, but yeah, I think they can, like, make use of their middles and have solid left side, despite Konarski playing at Konarski level. They can compete for a top 8. Not necessarily get there, but like other teams have some of their own problems, so they can, like, get past them.
Okay, Everett, what's thinking back to the Skra years of old? Who's your favorite ex-Skra player, like from when we were growing up? Because I definitely have one, or like a combo of them. I loved the Nicolas Uriarte Facundo Conte combo. That was really good.
Or that period of time when Kurek was coming up.
I forgot he played for him. Yeah, Kirk on the left side and Mariusz Vlaswy in his prime. Like those teams were awesome.
I mean, Mariusz Vlaswy has to be like the most legendary guy to come out of that team. Who else?
I mean, let's not forget Stefan Antiga, Michał Winiarski.
That's right.
Oh, Antiga
and Winiarski. Oh man,
Antiga was playing in 2014.
Yeah,
like he was on the team in 2014.
Yes.
He went from the team to coaching Poland to
coaching the national
World Championship.
Team, yes.
Yeah, wow. So like that's the Skra that I want in my head. Like that's the Skra that I want there to be. It's kind of like the New England Patriots in the NFL. There's a lot of similarities to that in American football. But I mean, last year they were such a dumpster fire. But it is good to hear that at least like off the court they are on track to getting back to where they once were. That is good.
Yeah, I mean regarding Champions League, if we are like going really off the trail, but. They played in the final and lost 3-2 to, I think, Zenit Kazan, definitely a Russian team. And there was like, they had a match ball. One of them was Vlaswy serving, and Alechna famously took 2 timeouts before he served. Like, took 1 timeout, they went back, and he took another one. And then Winiarski had a match ball, and he spiked. The ref called it out, and it was like there was a block touch, but he didn't see it, and the challenge wasn't there at the time. So they were like a tiny bit away from winning the Champions League. The most interesting part, guess who was their coach?
I don't know.
He was mentioned today by accident, but still.
Oh, did I say Nawrocki on accident?
Yes.
Was it him? Oh my goodness.
And this was the team with Kurek, Antiga, Winiarski, and Vlaswy.
Wow. I mean, when you think of stooges associated with the Skra Bełchatów program, you could maybe forgive me for mixing up Nawrocki and Piechocki. My bad.
Especially someone who actually was coach of Skra Bełchatów at the point.
Exactly. So that's a pretty good picture of what this program has been through the last year or so. It's good to hear them. It's good to hear they're moving back in the right direction. I, for one, will never pick a Wolmach and Konarski team to make the playoffs. I'm just not going to do that. But if they're top 10, maybe 9th, if they get to maybe about like a 500 level in terms of wins and losses, that would be a good sign, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's fair.
Anything else from either of you gentlemen about Skra Bełchatów?
No, I'm just sad.
You're sad?
I'm I don't know, like as you said, like when Adanos sent us the new list, and I was like, this is crazy. At least last year it looked like they were trying to become like still be a top team, and this to me is just very much like, hey, we know where we are, and we're gonna compete to be in the playoffs this year. And it's sad for one of the most storied clubs in the world.
I mean, considering how close they were to completely collapsing or basically being like the relegation fodder, it's good they are at least like fighting for playoffs and not in second division or like the worst team in the league.
I agree with Pavel. It seemed like honestly they were pretty close to maybe like almost financially having to fold. Like it seemed like they couldn't even afford a PlusLiga level roster until I guess they must have convinced PGE to continue sponsoring them after Piechocki was sacked, which is good. I mean, obviously that needed to happen. So we'll see what they do. This is an interesting team. This is an all-time storied franchise. I wouldn't pick this particular roster to make the playoffs, but and there's the story of Andrea Gardini coaching the team. That's another piece of it. We'll see how it goes. I'm fascinated to check it out. So we've got 2 more teams until we get to last year's playoff teams. Let's talk about Ślepsk Suwałki. Hopefully I'm pronouncing most of these correctly. Suwałki, as we looked on the map earlier, way up in the northeast corner of the country. They probably have the worst travel situation of any club in the PlusLiga. Is that fair, Pavel?
Yeah, they do, for sure.
So 13 and 17th last year. They weren't really ever going to make the playoffs, but they were okay. They were also never going to get relegated. They have Matias Sanchez of Argentina, the little guy set in the offense. He was there last year. He plays all 6 rotations, which is honestly amazing. Last year they had Miran Kujundžić, the Serbian guy, as their primary offensive player. He is now gone. They do bring in Joaquin Gallego, the Argentinian middle. But my question for you, Pavel, is where's this team going to get their offense from?
Filipiak again. because I
Yeah.
think Filipiak was scoring more than Kleontic last year. And Halaba is capable of being like a decent offensive player. So, and First was surprisingly good last year because Radom looked like a dumpster fire, and he was actually the guy that was carrying them most of the time. It's the guy who got them this feeling. So, as long as First can look at this like similar to the level he showed in Radom, and Filipek can continue to score so many points at pretty decent percentages, they should be fine. No, and yeah, they have Matias Sanchez, who was like in terms of row setting, ignoring his obvious weaknesses, was one of the best guys, the best setters in the league, because he's very good, but he's also very short. And
So small. He's just so
yes,
small.
I
Yeah,
think he got like 2 points with his block last year.
2
despite
blocks
all of that.
in
Yeah, I think
30
so.
matches. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm kind of even surprised that he got 2. They also did pick up Giga Stern, the outside hitter from, where was he last year? Friedrichshafen, I think.
Yeah, I think so.
And they have a foreigner spot to use on him if they need another outside hitter. So maybe. I've also seen Matsura, the middle, before. Was he like a backup on Zaksa a year or 2 ago?
Jastrzębski Węgiel.
Jastrzębski, thank you.
Yes.
And then
Yeah.
okay, and then Shunkovic at libero, I know nothing about. So, could this team make the playoffs, in your opinion?
They were in pretty close to playoff spots for a while last season, and they had pretty bad last few weeks, and they didn't make it. So yeah, they are probably, in my opinion, like a similar level to Skra. So decent offense from Halaba, Filipiak, and First. And Sanchez can use Gallego probably really well because both Argentinians, and well, Sanchez is known for playing with his middles. But outside of that, Masira is pretty average, and other middles are also pretty average. So I don't know if Sanchez can make them work too well. And Halaba was pretty inconsistent, so we'll see. I mean, Stern is decent backup in that case. But yeah, I don't know. It feels to me like an inspiring team. It's like Sanchez and a bunch of decent players and nothing else.
Yeah, another team I'm kind of just uninspired by. I remember loving them a couple years ago, and they had Tuaniga and Nick Scherzen. I think that was the year that Scherzen led the league in aces, and that team was fun. This team is a little more like I won't go out of my way to watch any of their games.
Yeah, last year at least they had Kleontic, so it was more exciting, and Takfam for Gayengo is like 1-for-1 switch basically. So
I agree.
They were more exciting this time. Like they need First or Halaba to get going, and I don't know. I don't think they can. Like Halaba cannot improve. Like he's stuck at his current level. He's not bad. He's a PlusLiga player, but they need something more in order to fight for top 8. And First while he was surprisingly good last year, he needs to be probably even a bit better if they want to make it to top 8.
Everett, any takes on this team?
No, I mean, I really like Sanchez, but
me too.
Other than that, I think this team is going to struggle probably around the same area that they're now. I think there's quality throughout, but just not enough to make the playoffs, especially in the PlusLiga.
Same, I agree. Let's move on. We can try and pick up the pace just a little bit before we get to the playoff teams, where we have a bunch to talk about. The last team that did not make the playoffs last year is Bogdanka, who I think is a new sponsor, Luk Lublin. Now, this is not to be confused with Cuprum Lubin. This always gets me. I think it confuses a lot of non-Polish fans, but there is a difference. Lubin and Lublin are completely different clubs. So I wanted to try and make that clear as best I could. This was fun. This is a fun team for me to watch last year. It had Scherzen, Jeff Jendrick, and Dustin Watton. So 2 Americans and an honorary American. But this year, definitely a different story. They have 2 foreign outsides, Tobias Brand and Alexander Ferreira. And then they have Thales, the Brazilian libero, kind of out of nowhere. And then Comenda, et cetera, I actually like. But other than that, I know very little about this team. I was happy that Pavel did not project Damian Schultz to be their starting opposite, because I hate that guy. Whoever Malinovsky is, I hope is going to be a lot better than Schultz. Pavel, can Lublin make the playoffs? Can this Lublin team make the playoffs?
Yeah, I think so. I think they can make playoffs. I don't
Really?
know whether they will, but yeah, I think Ferreira is really good. And I think Comenda made like massive steps forward last year. I think he was underrated because in the first part of the season they lost like every winger. Like they had Szczecin was injured, Malinowski was injured. I think even their second opposite, Szymon Romać, was injured, and they've signed the emergency opposite in Rafał Furyna for a month or two. And despite all of these issues, they were like getting some points. And when all of them came back, like with Szczecin and others, they started to play much better and got some like 9 wins in a row, climbed up the league table, and basically, if we ignore like first half of the season, like first quarter of the season, when they were missing almost like 3 or 4 players, then they were like probably they would have made it into top 8.
They had a
like,
good second half of the season, right? Like I feel
middle,
like I remember them
like,
going on a run.
Yeah, I think they had like 9 wins in a row, and it was like in the middle of the season. And then they had like a short crisis, and they fired their coach. It was pretty weird, like unexpected move. And last 2 or 3 weeks were pretty decent. They were like 1 step away from making it into playoffs.
It looks like they were 1 point behind 8th place. They were 1 point behind, I guess, Stal Nysa in 8th.
Yeah,
so
but
they were really close.
Like Nysa needed 1 point in last game, and they've got it. And Luk played later, so they knew they cannot make it. Otherwise, they played Skra, and they would have played for last playoff spot.
Okay. I know pretty little about this team. I do remember Comenda setting the Polish VNL team in like 2019, I think,
when they won bronze in Chicago.
Yeah, bronze in Chicago, and when they sent the B team basically the entire summer, and Comenda was the guy, and then obviously we know Thales from Brazil. But I mean, this is another team that just doesn't really get me that excited about much.
Yeah,
I also think that Tobias Brand is about the most average outside hitter in all of volleyball. I think there's nothing really particularly he does super well or super poorly. I just think he's extremely average.
Yeah, that's why I'm looking at Ferreira more, because he had like a very good season in Zawiercie a few years ago, and he's a good player that can carry the offense. So that's where I'm hoping like Comenda and Ferreira are 2 guys I would look to be the best players.
Everett, got anything, or can we move past Luk Lublin?
I just want Lublin to serve better this year. They had the least amount of aces in the PlusLiga last year. Only 127 aces on the season, which is far less than anyone else. I mean, Resovia had over double that. So, yeah, I think they took a step back this year. Like they lost some big players with Szczecin and Jędryk. And that, like Adanos said, they really caught fire last year. But we'll see. I agree. Like Tobias Brand is very much one of the most just very middle of the pack players there is, and it's kind of the same thing with Ferreira as well too. I think he's really good, but not like quite much past that. So I suspect that they're going to take a step backwards.
Yeah, if they, I would not project Lublin to make the playoffs. It's not because they're bad. It's because I think there are 8 or maybe more than 8 teams that are better than them.
Yeah, I mean, their service should be better because Malinowski is pretty good, Ferreira is decent, and Comenda improved his service. So it's like at least they should have that. They won't be like great, but it shouldn't be so bad.
And maybe they'll be healthier this year too. That would also help.
Hopefully.
So I think now it is time to move into the teams that actually did make the playoffs last year, starting with the team that ended up beating out Luk Lublin by 1 point to make it at only 14-16, PSG Stal Nysa. Now, Nysa, I think like 2 years ago, was terrible and almost got relegated. Now, and then all of a sudden last year, they must have gotten more budget because they ended up making the playoffs, which was very nice. However, in my opinion, the most important player on last year's team was Wasim Bentara, who is now gone and is going to be the opposite for Perugia. Everett and I have already talked about that move. I really like Bentara. Everett is less high on him. And
I like him. I just don't think he's a good hole for Perugia.
I think he is. Nysa, however, replaced Bentara with another one of my least favorite players in Polish volleyball, with Maciej Muzaj, who at least he's not playing for Resovia anymore, and I don't have to waste my time watching him in Champions League. I think Nysa is a bit more of a spot where Maciej Muzaj belongs. You also get Nicolas Zerba in the middle, who I like. You get Timofey Zhukowski at setter, who's been around forever. Kamil Shimura at libero is good. Michał Gierżot at outside hitter is pretty good. Pavel, do you think this Nysa team now with Muzaj as probably the primary scorer, can they go to the playoffs again?
I think they will be weaker than they were last year, but considering their opponents will probably be like Skra Lublin and Suwałki, they have a decent chance to make it despite all of that. I think Bentara was like scoring probably the highest number of points, and I'm guessing, I didn't check the stats, but I'm pretty sure they were setting their middles the least in the league. So they were basically playing Gierżot and Bentara, and they were carrying their offense. And I don't think it will change because like Gierżot and Wodarczyk are not amazing set of outsides when it comes to passing, and despite Shimura being much better there than Kamil Dębiec, it's not enough to make them a well-passing team, and I don't think Zhukowski will play differently with different players. So I don't know. I feel they will play the same way, but Muzaj won't be as efficient as Bentara, and Wodarczyk will be like probably at similar level to Kwasowski. He might struggle with passing because Gierżot might need some help, unless they rely more on El Grawi. But
what
they
is
really need Gierżot.
okay? What's the general opinion of the Polish volleyball community about Maciej Muzaj? Because I've always been very vocal about not liking him. I think he's incredibly erratic. He wastes some incredible physical tools by being incredibly error prone. Am I the only one who thinks that way? What does the Polish community think of him?
Yeah, he's the guy with left hand, like impressive physics in terms of like his spiking reach, which is like insane. But he doesn't have the power to spike, and I think many people agree that his mental side is not great. That he lacks confidence, or maybe he isn't calm enough. He makes he has pretty weird technique of spiking and makes some basic errors sometimes. So despite all of that, and despite being like so tall and jumping so high, his blocking is pretty bad. So
that's true.
Yeah, he was okay last season, like better than in past, and he might be a bit better when he becomes like the main guy of the team. Like when he played for Trefl Gdańsk, he was pretty decent because they were setting him a lot. He was their main offensive player. So he might be a bit better than he was thanks to that.
And he's playing for a team that's not going to be in the spotlight the way that Resovia was. I think
so less pressure. Maybe he will be able to play better. But I don't think he can like suddenly out of nowhere improve massively. I think he will be basically Muzaj we saw last year, maybe slightly better, maybe the same, but nothing crazy.
Okay. Everett, any thoughts about Stal Nysa?
I think they're going to take a step back this year. I mean, Maciej Muzaj is just not Bentara. I mean, as much as I don't think he's necessarily the answer for Perugia, there's no doubt that he is a scoring machine and has been over the past number of years. So do I think that they're going to be able to just replace him? No. And I mean, also they had Kento Miura as a backup to Bentara last year. So not only does that give you a little bit longer leash with a guy like Tara because, you know, if he makes some mistakes, it doesn't matter. You can put Miura in there, but you know, they just don't have those backup guys this year. So I expected to see them on the outside of the playoffs this season, I think.
Yeah, if I were to make a choice, I think Luk will overtake them.
Okay.
Despite being slightly weaker. I think Stal is also slightly weaker, so
I'm struggling with that too. I think my top seven playoff teams are pretty locked in. I think they're going to be the same as last year's top 7 teams. I don't know who I would pick at 8, and because I certainly don't know as much about those teams. It is kind of a mess. However, whoever does make the playoffs at 8 will have absolutely no chance in the playoffs against whoever is the 1 seed. So perhaps it won't really matter particularly much. Let's move on to the team that finished 7th last year. However, they did lose 2. They lost to Nysa in like the placement series, but Indikpol AZS Olsztyn almost beat, was it Zawiercie? I think they almost beat Zawiercie in the quarterfinals. Like that was
really close.
That was an awesome series. I remember it was by far the best quarterfinal series. Well, I think Zaksa versus Warszawa was pretty good as well. But this Olsztyn team was very good last year, and I honestly think they might have gotten better. Maybe. They lose Karl Butrin, who is a monster, who I love. They lose Taylor Averill, who's a huge friend of our channel. And they lose Lipinski, they lose Andringa, who played a little bit of outside last year. They lose Paremba in the middle. They keep Josh Tuaninga. They go and get Alan Souza from Brazil at opposite. And now they have this awesome new group of outside hitters featuring Nicolas Sherzhin, Moritz Karlitzek of Germany, and Manuel Armoa of Argentina. Like that group right there, those 4 wings, Sherzhin, Karlitzek, Armoa, and Allen, that is an awesome group. I'm very excited to watch them. And as far as I know, Kuba Havryluk is a very, very like highly touted libero prospect.
Yeah, he's 2003 as well, and he was part of the team that won with Kubicki.
Okay, so I guess my questions for this team are: how good are the middles? I don't know anything about Jakubi Shak, and I'm not even going to try and pronounce Jakub Majchak. Wow, that's tough. That is a tough one. Tell me about those 2 guys because I know nothing about them.
Jakubi Shak is the guy that was pretty he was known as promising outside, and he's I think 2'8", like he's very tall. But he moved to middle 3 years ago when he signed for Cuprum Lubin. So it will be his 3rd season as a middle, I think. He had like some very impressive subs last year because he was mainly on the bench, but Poremba had average season, so he was often getting chances, and he was either very, very good or very average, and with nothing in between most of the time. But he's a guy with good spiking reach, and he can still improve because he just changed his position not so long ago. And looking at that, his spiking is good. He's tall. He's pretty agile and fast for someone as tall. So I would say he's a guy that can still improve and can perform really well, but there is a question mark whether he can be consistent.
Okay, and then Mike Schock looks like, was it 2004?
Yeah. So it's his 1st season in PlusLiga. He just moved from 2nd division. He was good in Spała. He was good in national teams, in youth setups. So I think he will get a lot of playtime because I feel like he can be like the next guy to join Huber and Kochanowski. Maybe not as good as them, but the guy to join them and Bieniek once Kłos retires.
Wow.
So like maybe not as good as them, maybe not like top level, world class, but still pretty good, and the guy to become this number 4 middle for us. And
wow, I had no idea he was that highly rated.
Probably one of the best rookies to join PlusLiga this year, and definitely one of the most promising middles in Poland.
Okay, so that answers my question about the middles. My other question is, since, like, as far as I know, I'm looking at the roster, they have no backup opposite.
Yeah, they have 5 outsides.
What are they going to do when Alan Souza inevitably gets hurt? Because he does that every single year.
They will play Karlitzek as opposite.
Karlitzek? I thought they might put Armoa on the right side.
Yeah, I think they can probably try both. I mean, I look at this team and I would call them like glass cannon, the clear definition.
Yes, glass cannon, well said.
Tuaninga was seriously injured. Sherzhin always get injured. Karlitzek was almost permanently injured last season. Alan Souza always gets injured. It's like they will have problems with injuries, but when they are all healthy, they will be very, very dangerous. So this team can be I'm looking at this team as the most unpredictable in top 8 for sure, because they might be like this team that disappoints and maybe even like somehow finds a way to not make it into top 8 and lose to Skra or Luk Lublin. Because, like, look at this team. Like, Souza and Karliczek gets injured, and they are basically screwed. And
they're
so,
they're definitely one injury away from being
but,
dead.
Yeah.
Especially if Szczerzyn gets injured, they're
Then
especially screwed.
Dead. Yeah,
completely dead because they would have to put a Polish guy in for him. I mean, I love Nick Szczerzyn, 2-time VLA champion. He's like an honorary American at this point, but him switching his nationality from French to Polish obviously was a good move for him, and Olsztyn needs him desperately because he doesn't count as a foreigner, because they're obviously going to play Tuininga every game. They're going to play Allen every game that they can. Also, Everett and I have gotten to know Coach Javier Weber a little bit as he's been helping the U.S. national team the last couple of years. The combo of him and Tuininga, having shared the gym for the last couple summers, that is an electric duo right there. And I mean, if Tuininga gets hurt, I would have to expect Javier Weber to put a jersey on and sub himself in and set.
Yeah, well, he didn't last season, so he probably won't try it the next time. But looking at them, it's like, if they can gel together really well and if they can all stay healthy, I think they can maybe even upset a top 4 team. But on the other hand, they can completely collapse and get absolutely destroyed by injuries.
Yeah, this team's pretty volatile. Everett, do you see a world where, kind of like we were looking at last year, Olsztyn was about a set away from going to the semifinals? Do you see a world where that's possible?
In a world where this team can stay healthy. That's my biggest thing. But I really like the combination of outsides you have on this team with Karliczek and Szczerzyn and Tuininga and Alan Souza. Like, Alan Souza is a rhythm guy. Tuininga is a rhythm setter. And Karliczek, we saw this year with Germany how versatile he can be. And Szczerzyn and Karliczek are 2 guys who can pass well with good shoulders on them. You've got Alan Souza, who's really dynamic, and you have Tuininga, who can sling the butter better than almost anyone. And time again, we've seen him really push. Like, he's the type of setter who makes teams better. And with what he has around him on this one, and, Adanos, you were talking about some of the middle prospects on this team as well, too. I think this team is going to be really, really fun, especially with the legend Javier Weber running them. Like, I think this is a team that people are not going to be stoked to play up against, but the folks in Olsztyn are going to have an electric time watching them play.
Yeah, fun. Fun is a very good word. This team's very fun. I was talking to Nick Szczerzyn on this is a good story. Szczerzyn was in the States for the summer, like he often is. He played a little VLA. He played at Wapaka. He played grass 3s at Wapaka, where he got second. And I ended up driving him home from Wapaka back to Chicago. And on the way home, we were talking about just all sorts of volleyball stuff. And I asked him about if he was excited to go to Olsztyn. He says, "Yes, I'm so excited to play with Josh." Nicholas Szczerzyn and Josh Tuininga, that they played together in Suwałki a couple years ago, like I mentioned. Szczerzyn was so excited to team up with Josh Tuininga again. And if both of them are healthy and if everyone else around them can be supportive, this team is going to be sick from the service line. They're going to be pounding balls. They've a couple, like Everett said, a couple crazy shoulders on some of the dudes on this team. And I think they'll be extremely fun, if not a little bit volatile. And volatility is fun for the fans.
I'm really excited with our Moa coming off the bench too.
Me too.
I really want to start seeing him getting into some stuff, and I think this may be the good team to do it on.
Argentinian head coach, his first overseas contract outside of his country. I think it's a perfect fit.
Yeah, it fits him well. I think the only way Olsztyn can make it slightly better and slightly less worrying is signing Puchowski, who is still free agent. He's Polish outside, who is pretty good at passing and very experienced, and much better than other Polish outsides they have at the moment. So it can be like they won't be screwed if Szczerzyn gets injured if they get him.
Okay. What do you think the chances are of them making a signing like that so close to the season starting?
I mean, pretty unlikely, but as long as he's a free agent, it's still a possibility. I mean, maybe Szczerzyn gets injured during preseason and they need someone and they will just get him.
Yeah, I guess desperate times call for desperate measures if it comes to that. Yeah, I think Olsztyn will be fun. I wish that Taylor Averill stayed. I wish that he
Yeah.
stayed in Poland in general. I don't blame him for going to the Chinese league, but I do
Go
wish
get that bag.
Yeah, I do wish we still got to watch him. I think this team's going to be fun. Thank you for giving me a little bit more hope and background about their middles. I thought that might be a weakness, and it doesn't seem so much that way anymore.
Yeah, maybe weakness compared to other top teams, but like
Sure.
there is a hope.
Okay. All right. Can we move on to the next team?
Yeah.
Let's talk about Trefl Gdańsk. They are all the way up in northern Poland. In case you guys don't know where Gdańsk is, there it is up there on the ocean, or on the sea rather. They play their home games in the Ergo Arena, don't they?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
God, must be nice. That's the arena they always use for like World Championship finals and stuff like that. Gdańsk was good last year. In my opinion, the two reasons why they were good last year were Luke Perry, who might be the most underrated libero on the planet, and Bartłomiej Bołądź, who is no longer there. They no longer have those guys. They have this Kevin Sasak character at opposite. I don't know anything about him. They still have Kampa, who Everett and I both really like. They have Jan Martinez at outside, who I like. I think Urbanovic and Niemiec in the middles are okay. But Bołądź, the big lefty guy, basically carried them last year with, Mariusz Flazlu is on the bench. He has since retired, the legend. But Bołądź was their guy on offense last year, and Perry was maybe the best statistical libero in the league. So without those two guys, Pavel, how do you see Gdańsk's season going this year?
Yeah, they are probably not going to be as strong, but on the other side, at least Piotr Orczyk is coming back from an injury. He had a very impressive start of the season last year. He was looking great, and then he tore his ACL, I think, and he was out for the rest of the season. That's why Savitsky got his opportunity and took it and played really, really well. But Orczyk is a guy with worse service, but slightly better passing, I think, and way more offensive power. He's also a lefty, so
a lefty outside.
Yeah,
interesting.
But looking at this team, I don't know how their Finnish libero will do, because Luke Perry was absolutely nuts last year. He was the best libero in the league, and it was even close. Statistically, he was I think difference between him and second best passer in the league was as big as between second and 10th, something like that.
Whoa.
He was by far the best. It wasn't even close. And I don't know if you've watched Trefl enough, but at some point it was against every float service, they were standing next to each other, or three guys. And once the opponent started to toss the ball, Savitsky left the court, and Martinez kept his third of the court, and Luke Perry took the rest. 2/3 of the court was all to him, and he was passing still really well. So, I don't think there is no way this Koika character can replace him.
Yeah,
opposite role, it's Sasak. He's a huge guy and really big. He was their backup opposite before Bowen joined. And
he's 207. He's pretty big. Yeah.
Yeah, and he was much better than Vlaswy, but Vlaswy was still starting, which was why Winiarski had a lot of criticism back then.
I forgot that Winiarski used to coach this team.
Yeah. They had great results, but I was rating Janusz very highly back then, and Marcin Janusz was probably the main reason behind their success back then.
Yeah.
And so Sasak needs to play pretty good, but Nasevich is another super talented opposite. Maybe not as talented as Dulski, but right behind him. So he's also, I think, 1 year younger than Dulski.
So is this a playoff caliber team again, or are they gonna? They were 20 and 10 last year is a very good season in the PlusLiga.
Yeah, they still have Kampa, they still have Martinez to help with defense and passing, and they Orczyk will boost their outside a little bit. So despite getting worse libero and worse opposite, with Orczyk they can at least partially make up for it, and they were clearly stronger than our teams behind them, besides maybe Olsztyn. So I think they will make it into top 8 again. They're a well-organized team, and it looks like the club is very well organized, and players and coaches all perform really well there. So yeah, I think they will make it into top 8 thanks to that.
Okay. Everett, what do you got about Gdansk?
I honestly don't have much. I'm somewhat surprised to hear Adanos say that he thinks that they're going to be top 8. For me, there's just a bit of a lack of star power, let's say, on this team, especially when it comes to their foreigners. But every year it seems I always underestimate Gdansk, and every year it seems that they always surprise me. So I'm not surprised to hear that they're quite a good organization.
Yeah, that does make sense to hear that they're a top-notch organization.
So
yeah, I think like one of their opposites will probably be better than we expect, and that's how they will make it into top 8.
One of them, we just don't know which. I mean, that's fine. If you have two high ceiling opposites, we'll see which one is.
One is very young, the other one is not so young, but also has not a lot of experience for someone of his age.
Let's see. Yeah, Sasak is 1997. Nasovic is 2003. So yeah, that's a young kid that could be really good. All right, interesting. Anything else? I think we can keep them moving. Down to our top 5 from last year, starting with the team representing the capital, Projekt Warszawa, 21-9 last year. They finished 5th. They lost that quarterfinal series to Zaksa. What was their win streak last year? Something like 12 or 14 matches in a row?
13, I think, quite a lot.
It was insane, the run that they went on. It was very, very impressive. And this year, I actually would argue that their roster top to bottom got better because they kept basically everything intact. They brought in Bowanj, the lefty from Gdansk. The outsides are the same. They've got Shalpuk and Tilly with Grabelny off the bench. Still got Firle at setter. Still got Wojciech at libero. Their problem is going to be, despite the signing of Stresko Licinac, both him and Peter Novakovsky probably won't play until like February at the earliest. That's what we were just talking about this in the Discord earlier today. The injury prognosis on both of those guys is not good.
Yeah, the only hope for them is that they will probably, if they truly start to train around in February, they can probably make it into playoffs. And since both guys are super experienced, they can still be quite valuable. But
I mean, that is not a good sign if you're talking about like what should be your 2 starting middles, maybe being available for the playoffs.
Yeah, at least their backup middles are good.
Now, Vrona is good. And I don't know who Kowalczyk is really.
Kowalczyk played quite a lot in playoffs last year and was very decent. And they also have Yuri Semeniuk.
Oh, they still have Yuri Semeniuk?
Yes.
Oh, he's not on the roster for some reason. That's good to hear. I do remember him being there last year. Well, they're going to need those guys because I'm sure they probably paid Licinac a lot of money to have back surgery and not play half the year. So that's tough. But I mean, Shalpuk, Tilly, and Bowanj, that is an awesome wing trio. And Shalpuk especially had an all-time great season last year, kind of out of nowhere, resurrected his career, and was a big reason why they won all those games in a row.
Yeah, definitely. Shalpuk had a sudden comeback, basically revival of his career.
Yeah.
The biggest problem I can see, besides Licinac and Novakovsky being injured, I'm looking at their outsides, and it's Shalpuk, TV, both are also pretty likely to get injured at some point, and Grobelny is also someone who can get injured. So, and that's why they started so poorly last year, because they had a lot of injuries, and I don't know if you remember, but they've signed Kamil Baranek as emergency backup, and he played some games as outside starting for them because they had so many injuries once again. So they need to avoid these injuries, and they are starting with 2 serious injuries, so it might be pretty difficult to avoid the other ones.
Well, at least they're not relying on Linus Weber at opposite anymore, because he, by the combination of injury and incredibly inconsistent play, has kind of faded into irrelevance as far as international opposites go. At least they have Bowanj. I think that they're going to start the season better for that reason. I mean, you would unfortunately, and we love middles on this channel, but you would rather have injury problems in the middle than at opposite.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, I I don't think Weber has fallen off as much as you have, Rob. He just really wasn't like he just didn't play for Germany this summer. That was a big one. But that pairing of when you had Weber last year and you did as well as you did with Weber, and now you've upgraded to Bolaj, like, I think that's a fantastic move by this team. I really actually really like this roster. I don't think
I like it too.
losing not having Novakovsky and Wisniak really is not the worst thing in the world. But with Rona and Kowalczyk, like that just means that these guys are healthy and good to go once the playoffs come around. And it's no like to me, like this is like the perfect, like almost like trade deadline move where you're upgrading in the middle once this team comes around. So if you have a team who learns how to play without them, and then you're going to move forward by adding those two guys who, you know, in their primes have been like two of some of the best middles like of their time. Like, of course, they're a little bit older now, but they can still ball. Like this team could be very, very deadly. And like you have three very similar outsides with Tilly, Schalpuk, and Grabelny, all kind of ball control guys who can play a little bit faster, which works well with Furle. So yeah, man, this Olsztyn team, or sorry, Warszawa team. I'm stuck on the last one. This it looks like they're finally recovering from the Anastasi.
I was hoping one of us would bring that up. Yeah, they made the huge addition by subtraction 2 years ago and getting rid of Andrea Anastasi, who somehow failed upwards into coaching Perugia. We all saw how that went. But I agree. I love this roster. I think Bolonj was the perfect piece to add. And Lisinac, if they get him healthy, I still think that Lisinac, when healthy, is a top 5 middle in the world. So healthy is a big question mark. But I agree with Everett. I think this roster is going to be awesome. 5th is about where I would put them again this year, honestly. Maybe even 4th. I mean, this team can be very, very good.
Yeah, I think this team can push for top 4.
Yeah, they can push for top 4 for sure. And the big thing, they are not playing in Champions League.
Correct. They did play in Champions League last year, and they were brutal.
Because that's before they changed coach.
Right. Yeah, I remember I think it was the first Champions League game I ever commentated. It was a Warszawa game, and they got stomped in kind of embarrassing fashion by, I think, Ziraatbank from Turkey, and I was expecting way more, and I was just not impressed. And that was the Anastasi era, so not so good.
Yeah, it was Anastasi era.
All right. I'm glad we're all on the same page about Warszawa. I do think they're going to have a pretty good year. Let's move on to another very interesting team. Aleron CMC Warta Zawiercie. They were extremely close to playing Champions League again this year. They played Champions League last year. I think they lost in that first round of the playoffs to Zaksa, and then they lost the 3rd place series 3-2 to Resovia. And as a friendly reminder, if you watched last year's PlusLiga preview on this very channel, our good friend Pavel actually picked Zawiercie to win the league last year. I think I gave him a little bit of a hard time last year for picking a team with David Konarski at opposite to win the league. Sure enough, that was a bit of a problem for them. But they went and got Kauro Butrin, Trevor Kleveno, and Mateusz Biniak, and Luke Perry. This team on paper is awesome. And this year, I actually might pick them to win the league. Like, this is a way better team on paper than they had last year. I love the Zawiercie team. I think Kleveno and Kvolek is a good outside pairing. The only thing I'm wondering about is out-of-system scoring ability from the left side position. Everything else for this team, I absolutely love. Pavel, what are your thoughts? Are you going to go ahead and repeat the pick and then pick Zawiercie to win it again this year?
Possibly. I mean, they are not in Champions League this year, so they probably get a bit more rest time. They have the best service in the league by far. They have great passing setup this year because last year Kovacevic, it wasn't as good. All they need is basically Kvolek being more like Kvolek we saw like 2 years ago or 3 years ago, not the Kvolek we saw last year, who was very good with passing, very good at service, but very bad at offense and spiking in general, which is what they were missing. I think Kvolek, Kleveno, and Butrin is enough firepower, even on high balls, but you've got to remember that Kvolek, Kleveno, and Perry is like sick passing, sick
That's
defense.
An amazing passing trio. Maybe the best in the league, other than maybe Zaksa.
Yeah, I think they are better at passing and defense than Zaksa, and especially individually. Like they are really, really good. So, like, yeah, I think they can win the league as long as Kvolek can get back in shape, and Winiarski doesn't lose his like stay focused. If we see the same Winiarski we saw at Olympic qualifier, yeah, they can win the league. I would probably choose them to win the league if that's the case.
Yeah,
And
we like to
looking
make fun of Winiarski for being the "come on, guys" is like the only thing he says.
Yeah.
But I think that with a team like this, a coach's job on a team like this, no matter who it is just stay out of the way. Because this team is
Yeah.
so good that I think that they can get, they should absolutely be a top 3 team in the league without any oversight from their coach. Like if you put these 7 players out there, or I mean, you could even put in Zniszczo for Szalacha, and it's like they're pretty much interchangeable in my opinion.
Yeah.
Like you're right, should be the best serving team in the league for sure. Biniak, Butryn, Kvolek, and
I
like
will give you a clue. They were ranked in terms of like raw aces number without services per set or anything like that. They were Butryn was second, Kvolek was third, Tavares was fifth, Bieniek was sixth.
whew,
Then at Kleveno, who is a nasty serve, and Szalacha with
Crazy.
decent serve, so you have like insane firepower from service line.
and you have Luke Perry, who like we said was the best statistical libero in the league
I
last
would go
year.
even one step further and say he was statistically for sure the best libero in the world, not just in the league.
In the world, okay.
I think we forget about Luke Perry because Australia is irrelevant, but he's really, really good. He's really good.
Yeah,
I think that
definitely.
he's an upgrade over Santiago Dinani, I think for sure. And Dinani is also very good. And I also think like I like letting Uroš Kovacevic go. I didn't like their play style last year in the way like they chucked him all the balls. He was getting way too much volume for a player of his play style. So that's because they had Konarski on the right side, who's just not good enough. But now the balance that they have, and now they have Biniak in the middle to be legitimately terrifying. Like this team, this might be one of the best teams in all of volleyball in any country this season, and they're not going to play Champions League. Are they playing CEV Cup?
I think so, yeah.
Okay, well they should be an absolute lock to win that tournament.
Yeah.
I think you may be not exaggerating, but pumping these guys up here. Like this is a very, very good team. Don't get me wrong, but like star power alone, like like there's plenty of other teams that I would pick, outright over this team.
I don't know, dude. I don't know. I mean, Zaksa has won 3 Champions Leagues in a row, and I mean, we'll talk about the other teams that I think there are clearly 4 title contenders this year.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. They're a very good team and they're a title contender. But you're saying that they're better, like one of the best teams in Europe?
I think I honestly think they might be. I think this Zawiercie team is that good. I do think that Kvolek is a bit of a hinge pin, like Pavel said. He's going to have to be offensively better than he was last year. But I mean, people who haven't watched Karol Butryn because he hasn't played that much, he hasn't played like Champions League or has only played a little bit with Poland. You don't understand how terrifying this guy is from the baseline and just all over the court. I don't care if he's like 195 at opposite or whatever he is.
Even slightly less, I think.
I don't care. He's the perfect absolute fireball of a build for a slightly smaller opposite. Yeah, he's 196. Karol Butryn is a monster, and Mateusz Biniak is the best serving middle on the planet. And I don't, other than maybe Robert Lendy Simone at his peak.
I would say that Biniak is the best serving player in the world, but that's
player.
Yes.
Whew.
Yeah, I think that
Okay.
in terms of raw numbers, he brings more balance than everyone else because he doesn't make as many errors, and he goes on an insane number of service runs. So this decrease in errors, and despite smaller number of aces, he causes a ton of issues to everyone else. And I think he was averaging like 4.7 or 4.8 services per set for Skra.
Service attempts. That's insane.
Yeah. And they've played a ton of tie breaks. So I don't think anyone had 4.5, and he was like 4.7 or even above that.
I'm glad you brought up that stat. That's something that Everett actually kind of pointed out to me a couple of years ago, is that looking at number of service attempts is actually a really good measurement of how effective a server is.
Yeah, I think he was at some point, like after 10 games, I think he was averaging like 5 services per set. So like he has insane numbers, and I'm pretty sure his errors is like significantly lower than everyone with full power jumping serve. Like,
yeah.
Last season he had 59 aces to 98 errors with over 500 attempts.
Whoa. Wow, better than 1 to 2 ace to error ratio.
Yeah.
That's outstanding. That's really good.
With 4.7 or something like that services per set.
Yeah, that is tremendous. Also, Everett, you get Sam Cooper. This is the Canadian we were talking about earlier, who's starting his career on the bench on an extremely good team. Everett, tell the people about Sam Cooper out of McMaster.
When I said that, Brody was in the perfect situation, I also think it's the same for Sam Cooper.
I agree.
Coming in for Zawiercie, he's going to get some time to play behind some veterans, some legends, Klevno and Kwolek. He's going to learn a lot from these guys. Sam Cooper is a little bit more raw. Like he has international pace on his serve from the baseline. He just has some fantastic kinetic chain. He hits it with a lot of speed and a lot of control. He has a high contact point. Like he fits in well with the kind of skill situation that you've got here at Zawiercie. And I wouldn't be surprised to see him, come in and play some minutes. Not a lot of minutes, but we saw him come in, drop 19 points against Poland in the VNL this summer. Like he has a guy
might have gotten him this contract.
No, he actually signed the contract the night before.
No.
Yeah. He signed the contract the night before the match.
That's awesome.
Which is huge. And I mean, for a guy who was actually thinking about staying in U Sports this year, it's awesome to see him competing in his team. So yeah, I think he's going to go in there, and I think I think they're going to see him on the court, and I think Polish fans are going to like to see him.
I mean, just even being in a practice gym of this caliber is going to be a nice way to start your career. And correct me if I'm wrong, Pavel, but Cooper could come in off the bench and serve for Szalacha, and it wouldn't count against the foreigner limit, right? Because he would be swapping in for Luke Perry's spot.
Yes, because Luke Perry won't be on court at the same time.
Okay, so I think that might be an opportunity to see him. I don't know that much about Szalacha's serve, but no reason not to use Cooper.
Yeah, in service, he should get some opportunities.
So I mean, my thoughts on this team are pretty clear. I think they're awesome. I don't know if I'm going to go ahead and pick them to win the league, but I think they are.
Yeah, you're out here popping off on.
I think it's them and Zaksa, man.
My goodness!
I think it's them and Zaksa. I like this Zawiercie team better than Resovia and better than Jastrzębski. Straight up.
You know what I like the most about this team? It's letting Kurosh Kovacevic go because he was basically controlling the whole team and setup, and Winiarski was not doing anything about it.
I agree. So, I don't think Kovacevic is a good locker room presence.
Yeah, I think that he is going out, so Tavares will be like, we have more freedom to do what he wants, and they won't play like Uroš. They will just play normal volleyball, and with Bieniek in the middle, they will be much better.
I agree. All right, can we move on to the other title contenders?
Let's do it.
Let's move on next to Asseco Resovia Rzeszów, who was the number 1 team in the PlusLiga regular season last year. They went 24-6. However, they did lose to Zaksa. They got swept by Zaksa in the semifinals before beating Zawiercie 3-2 in the third place series. So Resovia will play in Champions League this year for the first time in a while. That's actually kind of nice to see. I remember them being a mainstay in Champions League and being really competitive. I remember I think they might have hosted a final four one of those years.
In Krakow.
Yeah, that's right. We have TJ DeFalco on this team, who I obviously love. You have Clement Chabel. That is a very good outside duo. They were both great last year. And then you have the significant upgrade at opposite from Maciej Muzaj to Stefan Boyer. Boyer, for the first part of last year, for Jastrzębski, for those who don't remember, was the best player in the league. Is that fair? Like the first half of last season, Stefan Boyer was like the MVP of the league.
Yeah.
So can he keep that level up? I don't know. They also replace Jan Kozamernik with Karol Kłos, who is a lateral move at least a lateral move skill-wise, but it opens up the foreigner spot for Boye. So you still have Kuba Kochanowski, you still have Zatorski. So this is a team that is built better than last year. However, you know where I'm going with this. They still have Fabian Żyżga setting this team. I am so angry that I'm going to have to watch Fabian Żyżga set in Champions League. It's at least better than having him set Muzaj and having to watch that on the Champions League stage. But I think, like I said last year, all through the 9x9, as Resovia was amazing through the regular season, I said that they were going to flame out in the playoffs because of Żyżga and Muzaj. And they did. I couldn't have been more right about that. So my question for you, Pavel, is what is the Fabian Żyżga induced ceiling on this team this year with the upgrades that they made?
The best thing about their upgrades is that Żyżga has been known as a guy who is really good at setting opposite.
Yes.
And I think I've talked about it last year, that how in the hell they are bringing Żyżga, and their biggest weakness is at right side, and they have very strong left side, so it's like it made no sense. Now they have Boye, who should be much better, and it should give Żyżga should look a bit better in that way. And they are keeping the rest of the team basically the same. So I don't know, as long as Boye can stay focused and look at least close to how he looked in first half of the season or in playoffs for Jastrzębski Węgiel, they will be great. Żyżga can provide him good enough setting. That's something I know for sure, but can he stay focused, and can Medei work with him as well, and as Mendes worked with him in Jastrzębski Węgiel? Question mark.
Do you think that participating in Champions League and having to play all that many more matches might actually maybe hurt Resovia's PlusLiga campaign?
Probably. Yeah, I think Zaksa didn't win the league last year because they were more focused on Champions League and they didn't have time to rest. But let's leave it for Zaksa. So yeah, I think it can cost them. They will play a lot more games, and while they have pretty good bench with Luati, Bucki, and other guys, it's not like it won't. Like, they still have to travel, they still have to play. So the further they get in Champions League, the more it can hurt them in the league later on.
I do actually like Resovia's bench the most out of any of the top teams.
Yeah.
I think Luati is the third outside, Bucki is the second opposite, and Reno is the third middle. I think is a very well-constructed first couple guys off the bench in every position.
Potera is very good, second libero. For a bench also, he's great.
Okay. So that I like, and I think they're going to end up needing those guys. If they can play a couple of those guys against the lower level PlusLiga teams and still win, I think that will help them out a lot. I just have absolutely no faith in Fabian Żyżga when it comes to a playoff situation. I think that Resovia is going to be really good again in the regular season. I'm obviously rooting hard for TJ DeFalco. He was brilliant last year. He's one of the best servers in the league. I just have absolutely no faith in Żyżga in a playoff moment. I just don't. We've seen it too much historically. I just do not trust the guy. Everett, do you agree with that? Let me hear your thoughts on this Resovia team.
See, surprisingly enough, Rob, Resovia actually led the league in scoring last year in a lot of ways. They scored the second amount of most of kills, and they also had just straight hitting percentage. They had the best hitting percentage in the league last year, at around 55%. So I think that this team on paper has the ability to be better than Zawiercie and to be one of the top teams in the league. Like as you said, what Żyżga does the best is sets the right side. Yep. And obviously there's some type of connection there, and DeFalco likes the way he plays. And I mean, like, for Żyżga, for all his faults, is a rhythm guy, is a feel guy, and that's the type of guy, like, he's a little loose, right, with the way he sets. And I think, like, we know DeFalco's a bit of a loose cannon, and I think he likes that type of way. Like, he had all of those years with Long Beach. And I'm now not at all suggesting that Żyżga and Liga are the same caliber of setters, but I do think that they approach the game in similar fashion. So I think, as you said, this team made all of the right moves. They have the backups, they have the depth. Lueti, Bucki, Reno, they've got some good guys next up, and it's really interesting to see if they can push through. I don't know if they have that mental capacity to break through some of the other teams, though.
That's the thing, and I think the worst part about Zizga is his ego. I think that is the absolute worst part about having him be your starting setter, is because you know that he is still pissed off to this day that he's not setting the Polish national team. Like, Poland had their best summer ever, winning everything that they touched, and Zizga sitting at home like, that should have been me. They would have been better if I had been setting over Janusz. Like, that's the kind of ego that this guy has. That's the thing that's going to hold them back when it comes playoff time. It's not so much his inability to locate the ball, which is a problem. It's his ego and his on-court presence that I just really, really don't like.
I mean, hey, we talked about Stefan Antiga earlier, stepping from Skra right onto the Polish national team as a coach. One of the first things he did as a head coach was kick the team, allegedly because dude didn't show up to practice.
No. Let's get back. Zizga was our starting setter in 2014.
I thought it was Heinen who did that?
No, Zizga was our starting setter in 2014, and we had Paweł Zagumny as backup. But in 2015, Antiga started to have some bad relationship with Zizga, and he benched him in 2015 and 2016. And Zizga was pissed about it. And that's probably one of the reasons why Antiga got fired in 2016.
Oh my God. Why would you choose that bum of a setter over Stefan Antiga as the coach?
Because we had Zizga, Womack, and no one else at the time.
Yeah, it's true. You had no one else. Ouch.
This is a team that has just a lot of attitude. And I feel like they're going to play with a chip on their shoulders. So I really do like Resovia's moves, though. I think they've made some really good moves in the offseason.
Yeah, I don't know about that quantity of attitude when it comes playoff time. That can go one of two ways. And the way that it went last year, I think you upgraded significantly from Muzai. I think that's
on paper
huge.
They look great. They have big names, but then take a look at their personalities. It's DeFalco, Cebul, Boye, and Zizga at the same time.
I agree. Even a guy like
Midday,
Gianpaolo Midday, the weirdest looking headed bald man in all of probably the world. And Karol Kłos, I think, is a great signing, not because he's Polish, not because he's good, but because of his attitude. I think Karol Kłos's attitude is outstanding and can really help level this team out. But I think that, like you said, DeFalco, Cebul, Boye, Zizga, those four personalities, I don't see fitting together. I don't.
They could fit together amazing. You know, like a bunch of wrong angles making a right could happen. It could happen. You know, maybe DeFalco has that ability to be like boys with Boye, to be like, hey, you know, we're playing a bad team this week. You know, we're playing Radom. Let's go hit the clubs, and be like, you know what, we're playing Zaksa. Let's dial it back a little bit. Maybe they can work it out.
Maybe Kochanowski can do something about it. Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah, well, maybe Kochanowski can actually be useful, because he was unbelievable this summer hitting off of Janusz, and he was absolutely invisible most of last year hitting off of Zizga. He was excellent blocking and serving, but Zizga is not good at setting the middle. So I feel bad for those guys.
Because Zizga's late to the ball, right? Like Zizga is not fast to the ball, and Kochanowski loves being there on that first step.
He's one of the most technically poor setters I've ever seen.
Yes.
Because he relies on his talent more than anything else. I mean, he saved it himself.
He's like the poor man's version of Luciano De Cecco. Like, he's trying to play like De Cecco, but he can't.
100%.
Yeah, it fits.
Somebody in the chat says that Resovia is the Perugia of the PlusLiga. Do you guys agree with that in some way?
I think so. Yeah, as far as I know, they have the highest budget in the league. And according to rumors,
surprise me.
DeFalco has the highest contract ever in PlusLiga. That's how
DeFalco?
Yeah, because
really,
yeah, he was wanted by some other teams. So Resovia went out and spent a lot of money on DeFalco and Boye. So they are probably earning a ton of money, and I think Kochanowski had a pretty sick contract because he was unwilling to sign anything longer than 2 years with Skra or Zaksa. And he signed for 3 years with Resovia after he left Zaksa, so they probably had to somehow convince him.
Somehow convince
Somehow, yeah.
him. So-
I mean,
okay.
luckily, it looks like his contract will run out after this season, so maybe he will move to the team with a setter that will give him the ball.
I hope so for his sake. But I mean, I'll be the first to say that I think that when there's a place where more money is going into volleyball, that is good, and I want that to happen more. And if Resovia having success means that even more money continues to roll in, then I'm all for it. I just don't know if I see the personalities being able to galvanize when it matters the most in the playoffs. Obviously, this team is going to steamroll through the regular season. It wouldn't be that crazy if they took first, if they were the one seed in the playoffs again. That wouldn't be that crazy at all. They did it last year with Matsiei Muzai, for God's sakes. They could easily do that again. I just don't see it in the playoffs. So I'm curious to see how they handle it all. Any more thoughts from you guys about Resovia, or we got two more teams left? Can we move on?
I think the playoff format might help them. I think a shorter playoffs might help Resovia.
Yeah,
That's a
like
good
one
point.
crazy game and they are quarantined golden set at least.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Great point. Great point. Let's move on to a very interesting team. A team who has won the last 3 CEV Champions Leagues in Grupa Azoty Zaksa Kędzierzyn-Koźle. That is an all-time achievement. Like we said at the time, it is an all-time achievement to win 3 Champions Leagues in a row. They did it under 3 different coaches, which is even more ridiculous. However, they do keep Coach Tuomas Melvoa this year. Obviously, he did a brilliant job with Team Canada this summer. Great to keep him around. However, in 2 of those 3 Champions League winning campaigns, Zaksa failed to win the PlusLiga, including last year, where they got absolutely stomped by Jastrzębski Węgiel in the final. I think it was 9-1 in sets and 3-0 in matches. Wasn't even close. Now, like Pavel said, it was very likely that Zaksa was more focused on Champions League. They won Champions League. Hard to blame them for that. This is the exact same starting lineup that we see from last year. I love that. Everett and I have praised Zaksa's continuity as a club. We've praised them for being a model of club consistency and something that a lot of other clubs should follow along with. Obviously, they didn't have as good of a start to last season because they didn't have Bartosz Bednors. They picked Bartosz Bednors up midway through last year from China. They keep him this year. They have the same middles. They do lose Norbert Huber, so they lose some depth, but Pashitsky and Smith are still there. I think the depth is a little bit of a concern for Zaksa, but this starting 7 has won everything there is to win in all of volleyball. Pavel, what can this Zaksa team... First of all, can they win a 4th Champions League in a row? Let's start there.
Well, they can. It's basically the same team, so there is a chance. And Perugia is out as well, so it's slightly easier. They've won like their first and last Champions League were won with like the most insane runs because they had like every strong opponent you can imagine. Like in first round it was Lubin, Zenit, and Trento, and last year it was Zawiercie, Trento, Perugia, and then Jastrzębski Węgiel in the final. So it's not like it was an accident or a fluke. They've proved they can beat the strongest teams in Europe and do that pretty regularly. The thing is, they probably paid for it in league. The only time they've won the league and Champions League is because they skipped around because
it was the Russian
Dynamo Moscow got kicked. So they went immediately into semi-final, and they had more time to prepare. Last year, they played Zawiercie in February, then they had Polish Cup, Trento, Perugia, and they had to play high pressure, strong and important games against strong opponents for 2 months straight. So they had to run out of fuel at some point, and in league, it was pretty noticeable. In quarterfinals against Projekt Warszawa, they were running out of fuel. They were pretty weak against Resovia. They were struggling, and they were completely out of fuel against Jastrzębski when Jastrzębski was on fire, and they didn't even compete. But then they had
not at all.
10-day break or 2 weeks of break. They had some time to rest. They could train a little bit, and they were back to being really, really good in Champions League final. And they were able to beat Jastrzębski Węgiel there. So it was like a sweet rematch for them.
This is not a young team. David Smith is, what is he, 38? He's unbelievable. We've sung his praises all summer. Eric Shoji is not young. Marcin Janusz is not even that young. He's, 29? Kaczmarek is 29. Śliwka is 28. Bednors is 29. Like, as far as average roster ages, this has got to be one of the oldest teams in the league, maybe the oldest. And their first couple guys off the bench, I would say Wiltenberg in the middle, either Chitsugoi. Yeah, they have Takvam as well, or like Zielinski or Chitsugoi on the outside. Stempien at setter, who you're never going to use except in an emergency. Kvuth at opposite. Like, they will lose matches this season, and that's okay. Because they're probably going to have to use some of that depth to give some guys a break, and that might cost them in the regular season standings, and that's okay because Zaksa, I mean, you see they went 22-8 when they didn't have Bartosz Bednors half the year. They finished 4th in the regular season, and then they ended up winning Champions League. So this team has been there. They know how to turn it on. I have a ton of faith in their club, top to bottom. I think this is one of the best clubs in the world, maybe the best. And the way that they've built the continuity of this team year over year has really set a great example for all sorts of other volleyball teams. And they've proved that they can do it. They've proved that they can make all-time great runs through Champions League and win 3 in a row. They've mastered that learning curve. But as we're talking about the PlusLiga here, as far as PlusLiga success, winning the PlusLiga, it's kind of a different math problem in peaking at the right time to win a playoff series, and a different format this year is going to make it even more interesting. Everett, what do you think?
I mean, I would kind of disagree that when you said the team is old. I mean, and I think the chat is agreeing with me on that. You've got a bunch of guys in their peak age, like Kaczmarek, Bednor, Śliwka, like those guys are there ready to ball right now. To me, like when you look at this roster, when you look at what they've done together, you look at the coaching staff, it's hard to see any holes. I do think losing Huber is a big one, and I know he wasn't like 100% of a starter, but like, I mean, we've seen what he's done with the national team. He's played with his team before. He's won here before. Losing him is definitely not great, but you're going to have someone who's going to potentially step up. I mean, I think Wiltenberg had a pretty good VNL and international season for the Dutch as well. I mean, you've got arguably the best coach in the world right now, who's kind of done quite a bit recently. So I think for Zaksa, like focusing on winning the league, and like I think that they could pull it off this year. Like this could be something special with Śliwka, with Bednors, with Kaczmarek, with Janusz. Like these are guys who are now used to winning, and to me they are the pinnacle of this league at the moment. They
are. Now the other thing is, so they've got 2 foreign middles and a foreign libero. That actually only counts as 2 foreigners, because only 2 of those guys are ever going to be on the court at the same time. If they needed it, let's say they go in the middle of the season and once again pull a guy from the Chinese league. Maybe they could now even afford to have that be a foreign guy. If they needed to make a move midway through the season, like a foreigner at the wing, even just for depth, they can do that. They have the foreigner flexibility to do that. So I wanted to throw that out there.
I think it's gonna be interesting to see what happens with this Chitgoy, the Romanian.
Yeah.
Right. Like, and as we mentioned with the other Romanian guy, like they made some big strides at Eurovolley this year. Like, can he be a guy? He's much younger, 2005. I mean, he's the only. He's the only 2005 guy in the 2000s on this team. So he is young, but we'll see what happens. I wouldn't be surprised to see if they get someone from the Chinese league. Like,
their second youngest player is Wiltenberg, who's a 97. So like you guys are saying, oh, come on, this team's not that old. I'm not talking about how old they are within the context of one match. I'm talking about how old they are in the context of a season. I think that's a huge difference. Like those player ages and the regeneration and the recovery that they're going to need for an entire season is very different than them being able to peak and play one match, like, for example, a Champions League final. Like I have absolutely no doubt in their ability to win one match. Can they be successful through an entire season?
But I think, like, once again, like, you're not dealing with guys who are super old. You know, like Shoji is going to be, and I guess Pashitsky is quite a bit older, but but in a bunch of those guys who are in their peak physical conditioning, right, and are used to playing a lot of, like, these are all guys who have played a lot of games. They've played a lot of minutes. They kind of know what it's used to. Of course, they're not like a super young guy, but they're right there. They should be right there to be able to deal with it.
I tend to agree. I think there is no team better equipped to deal with all the volleyball that they're going to play than Zaksa. There is no team more prepared. There is no team whose mentality I trust more. There's no team whose experience I trust more than Zaksa. Like Pavel said, the runs that they made to win that first and that third Champions League were truly historic, legendary. And they have this is the same team. This is the same team that's done basically all three of them. They swapped in Janusz for Toniuti, they swapped in Bednors for Semeniuk, and that's basically it.
Yep.
And like Shoji for Zatorsky after the first one. Like, it's basically the same team. And the club is so strong and so reliable. Like, I have so much faith in this team to win one match.
Also remember, playoffs will be shorter. So
yes,
it's not like they need to be in good form for a month or a month and a half. It's like 2 or 3 weeks of peak form and it's done.
That's a great point. I think last year's playoff format hurt Zaksa. This year's playoff format probably helps them, especially like succeeding in a 2-match like Champions League style series with golden set potential. That's Zaksa's bread and butter at this point. Nobody's better at that than they are.
Yeah, and also interesting point. Guess who was responsible for physical preparation for national team in Poland? This guy called Piotr Pietrzak, who is also working for Zaksa and has been working for Zaksa for many years.
Unsung hero.
So yeah.
Okay. I mean, I obviously I rate Zaksa very, very, very highly. You don't win 3 Champions Leagues in a row without really having your entire organization together, top to bottom. So they could easily go out and win the PlusLiga. Very, very possible.
They might be the best organization in volleyball.
I think they are.
Yeah,
I think they are. I think it's probably them and maybe like Trentino
and Zenit Kazan.
Maybe Zenit Kazan. Yeah.
I mean, that's the only team with a private jet. So.
God, can you imagine?
Yeah.
All
right.
Kazan had way more money. There was this joke about Alekna that like he was going to his chairman and saying, "I want this guy," and they were like, "Okay." You didn't even ask how much would he cost or anything. No, they just got him because they were the biggest team club in the world.
Yep, that's money talks in volleyball. That's
Meanwhile,
for sure.
Zaksa has like 4th budget in the league. So.
And then they've won 3 Champions Leagues in a row with it. Last but not least, we got to talk about Jastrzębski Węgiel. They won their 2nd title in 3 years last year. They completely destroyed Zaksa in the final. Tomasz Fornal was the MVP of the league. It was very well deserved. They ended up losing in the Champions League final in 5-2 Zaksa. But this team is similar enough to last year. You still have Benjamin Toniuti at setter. You swap in Jean Patry for Stéphane Boyer, one French opposite for another. You pick up Norbert Huber in the middle, which is a really nice addition. You still have Yuri Glader. You still have Jakub Popivchak. My first question, at least roster-wise, is second outside hitter. Pavel, do you think that the combination of Rafał Szymura and Marko Sedlacek can fill the hole left by Trevor Kleveno?
Not fully. No, I don't think so. I think Kleveno is a little bit underappreciated, like some other guys in Zawiercie team. So, like, he's really good. People say he's good, but they don't realize how good he is and how much of good things he does for the team.
How valuable he is a good word.
Yeah, and while I would say Fornal was more valuable than him, I don't think Szymura or Sedlacek can give as much as Kleveno was giving to Jastrzębski Węgiel last year, or not as consistently. So, and I'm looking at the roles to like fulfill this hole and make up for it.
What do you think about the Patry signing? Do you think that he, both in terms of like probable production and play style, do you think he's a good fit replacing Boyer?
I feel like Patry was better with Brizard and Boyer fit better with Toniuti in French national team. So
that is true.
Yeah, I don't think Patry and Toniuti will work as well. Also, Patry in club, his club career is not as amazing. Meanwhile, Boyer was like out of this world for first 2 months of the season. Then he was good, and in playoffs he was amazing again. So I don't think Patrick can give them like, definitely cannot pick as high, but he can be like valuable. But he needs to be better than he was like last 3 years in Milano.
They do have some good options off the bench. I mean, Sedlacek is capable, and they have a foreigner spot if they want to use it on him. They have Ryan Slater off the bench at opposite. They've used a lot of 6'2" the last couple of years. They've used a lot of double sub because of how short Toniutti is as a blocker. So we've seen a lot of Jan Hadrav the last couple of years. Now we're probably going to see a lot of Ryan Slater. That's a good fit. They have Mbaye off the bench in the middle. I mean, he came in last year and started once Wisniewski got hurt and was huge. He was excellent. So they've got three very good middles. I think Popivchak is one of the best, like most unsung liberos in the world. And Marcelo Mendes is an outstanding coach. I'm just a little bit worried about opposite production and second outside hitter production because we all know how good Tomasz Fornal is. At least you should if you watched him last year. He was among very many great players in the PlusLiga. He was the best.
Yeah. It's going to be interesting to see how Fornal is able to bounce back from that. You know, like especially in a summer where he maybe wasn't one of the guys, like he wasn't kind of the go-to guy for the Polish team. So can he back that up? But I mean, when you look at the guys that this team moved on from, Boyer, Klevno, Wisniewski, Tevaporti, Hadrava, like all of those guys had impact at certain points.
They all played a lot.
They all played a lot. Like Boyer and Klevno, obviously, and Wisniewski as well. Tevaporti, Hadrava, kind of here and there, but like personally, I not respect, but I trust Ryan Slater a lot more than I would Hadrava. But Scrooter,
that's a low bar.
I mean, it's a low bar for you. That's a low bar for one person, Rob Sinclair, and that's you. But when you look at the other guys, sure, you did. I think you upgraded from Huber to Wisniewski, from like to Huber from Wisniewski, and the same thing like to Slater from Hadrava. But I'm not sure about everywhere else. So, I think it's going to be tough for JW to protect their title.
I think that Tomasz Fornal is better when he is the guy. And I think that that's a good bit of the reason why we didn't see him that much for Poland this summer is because he's better. He's better when he starts, and he just didn't. There wasn't really that much opportunity this summer for him to start. I mean, Śliwka and Leon were a great duo. Śliwka and Bednarz, Śliwka Semeniuk were a great duo. Like we didn't see Fornal that much because he's better when he's the guy. And Poland this summer he just didn't really get that much of a opportunity to be the guy. On this team, he's the guy, and I expect him to be brilliant this year again.
Okay, all right, I like that.
Yeah, I think he can be even better this year than he was last year, and he needs to be.
I think he needs to be as well. Yeah, this is I mean, Jastrzębski's won 2 titles out of the last 3 years, but everybody else around them, like those other 3 top teams, have gotten so much better. Like, I mean, Zaksa's won 3 Champions Leagues. They didn't change, but Resovia got better. Zawiercie got way better. And Jastrzębski arguably might have lost a little bit, at least on paper. So I'm curious to see how they can follow it up. Defending a title is hard. It is.
Yeah.
They weren't able to do it the first time. So
true.
Yeah, I think the biggest, like maybe not the biggest, but equally as big loss as losing Klevno and Boyer is losing Tervaporti. Because Toniutti is like way less consistent than he was before. He's starting to struggle more and more. And we've seen Tervaporti being subbed in and being really, really good and turning the games around. Like in Champions League against Halkbank, he was great. He was necessary when then they were losing this double sub very often because Tervaporti was really good too. And now with him gone and his replacement being way more questionable, I think it will hurt them more than people expect.
Yeah, the backup setter now is some Latvian kid named Edvin Skruders, who I know nothing about. And it has to be a downgrade from Tervaporti, I agree. Somebody in the chat actually is pointing out the same thing, that he's the most concerned with setting and that Toniutti might be losing it ever so slightly. So, I personally, of the 4 top teams, Zawiercie, Resovia, Zaksa, and JSW, I would put JSW 4th.
Okay. I don't disagree with that necessarily.
Okay. I actually think
on paper they look the worst. They have only one upgrade. Like they have so many downgrades, and the only like positive signing is getting Huber.
Is Huber in the middle. So
He's
that
great.
he is great. He practically won Poland a European championship. He was so good that tournament. So that's a show. That's like almost 2 hours 45 minutes of content. I think the only way we need to finish this out, gentlemen, let's pick we got to pick our champions. We got to put it on the record. We got to pick our champions. Everett, I want you to go first.
Zaksa. I mean, I know they haven't been able to get it done, but when you look at that roster, you look at kind of what they've done, when you look at the coaching staff, just Zaksa. Especially now that there's less matches.
Okay, Pavel, how about you?
I kind of want to back Zawiercie again, but I think Zaksa will win because playoffs are shorter.
Okay. I will go ahead and throw the Hail Mary and pick Zawiercie. I really like that team a lot. I actually think that once again, Zaksa is going to win Champions League, and they're not going to win the PlusLiga. That's my bold take.
Every Zaksa fan will take that.
I think they would too. We had that same conversation last year after Zaksa did win Champions League. I mean, at that point, who would you rather be, Zaksa or JSW? And I don't think Zaksa regrets how everything went at all. I think they're perfectly happy to have done what they did. So I've got Zawiercie. I'm really high on that team. Yeah, I'm curious to see the race for the Champions League spots too, because there's going to be 4 very deserving teams, and only 3 of them will go to next year's Champions League from Poland this year.
Very true. Yeah, it's going to be a race. It's going to be very interesting. And I mean, I don't think it's out of the question that one of the teams on the outside might look into.
Maybe. I think Warszawa could be good. I think Olsztyn could be good.
Yeah.
So one more time, if you want to watch the PlusLiga, your best chance is to pick up a subscription to Polsat Box Go and also get a VPN so that you can connect to Poland. Like make your IP address appear as Polish. That's going to be the only way to watch every single game consistently. But join the Volleyball Source Discord. We will try and help you out where we can on how to watch this stuff. And we're going to cover it obviously all season on the 9x9, our show that Everett and I do weekly, where we just talk about everything going on in club volleyball. So that's it. We're going to really enjoy watching the PlusLiga. It starts in 2 days. It starts on October 20th. Let's see. What are those first couple matches?
Jastrzębski Węgiel plays first game against Stal Nysa.
Okay. Yeah, Jastrzębski versus Nysa. Czarni versus Lublin is Friday as well. Skra versus Zaksa, Saturday.
You have Olsztyn Zawiercie on Saturday and Resovia
That's a good one.
Projekt Warszawa on Sunday. So like some really good games.
Okay, there's some great ones, and then I mean, with having to pack so many games in, there's going to be PlusLiga volleyball like pretty much every day this year. So
yeah,
love that.
Join the Volleyball Source Discord. There's a Poland channel where we're going to be talking about the PlusLiga all season long. Thanks for watching. We'll be back tomorrow, where we're going to preview the other contender for best men's league in the world, the Italian Superlega with Tommy Blizzard. I'm looking forward to that one as well. Boys, any parting thoughts?
Adanos, thank you so much. You're a legend. You're one of the reasons that the Discord works so well. We appreciate you coming on and sharing all your knowledge and thoughts with us.
You're welcome. I'm glad I'm no longer the only one, and I'm no longer keeping the Polish channel all by myself.
Yeah, we've got a lot of polls in the Discord.
Yeah.
We do, and we hope that we did your league justice. We're excited to provide it some coverage in English outside of Polish borders. So we follow along with the PlusLiga all year. Everett, thank you. Pavel, thank you. You watching, thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. We'll see you tomorrow to talk about Italy.
Peace.
Peace.